socking it. I don't care who does what to your Hershey Highway. And stop shouting. I'm not deaf. You know why you're shouting? Because it's in the script. You're the comic relief. Yes. And you know what else? I am the podcast. So shut up. It somehow is getting worse every week.
Do we want to do that again?
No. I think you have the yips, but for Arnold Schwarzenegger only.
Yeah.
You're like over, preparing or something. Yeah, you're like, you're trying too hard.
Put a sock in it.
What is that?
I don't know. You do it.
Put a sock in it. I don't know. I'm just doing like a basic.
Put a sock in it.
Put a sock in it.
Put a sock
in it.
This is wild. This was uncomfortable to watch you try and do.
It's my worst impression, and I don't think of myself as being good at impressions, but it's also one that almost everyone can do some version of.
It felt to me like that was a version, like a foreign version of someone who had watched an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, a bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. So that it was like, okay, so this is a person that maybe is in, Bulgaria who saw a TikTok of a bad impression.
It's 2 degrees away.
Then they did it. Yeah.
Right. It's a decent impression of a bad impressionist.
Even then, I think you could do better.
I said decent of a bad.
Decent of bad.
This is reminding me of my favorite TikTok, which was an impressionist of Robert De Niro. And again, maybe a low-level impressionist who's like, did a whole thing about getting the COVID shot. He's like, you want to give me the shot? You want to give me the shot? I'm the only one here. You want me to have the shot? And that having De Niro being against the vaccine was really, that's where.
Well, there's a take.
Right, I would hang on to that video for a while, just being like, wait, is this pro or anti? I can't even tell. Okay, it's anti. It's anti. Right.
I mean, this will obviously be hyper.
Give me the shot. I need.
Give me the shot. What? I don't know. It's getting worse.
And has that been what you've been doing, Arnold, for every episode of this series?
A lot of it.
It's McTiernan.
He came up for Predator, right?
Yeah, we're doing Terminator on Patreon simultaneous with this. So there's a lot of Arnold.
I have to tell you, this series is the one that I have been truly looking forward to because
can't wait.
I mean, McTiernan is I can't believe it take this long to get to him, like in a way.
He's one of the guys we've talked about truly from the moment we started doing the show. Yes. He was always on the short list.
Yes.
And especially when we started doing Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David. Good job.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce, baby.
Yeah.
In the early days, I think we really sought out rise and fall arcs.
Right, exactly. He has one of the most famous rise and falls ever.
Right. When we did James Cameron, it was like, is this going to break our show to cover someone who was this successful this consistently? Because we were doing Shyamalan, Wachowski's, Cameron Crowe, who all had similar kind of like arcs. And obviously coming out of George Lucas.
The premise, the blank check, does a blank check work? I mean, that really is the question.
Right. And
he's incapable. McTiernan is basically incapable of making a movie that does okay.
Yeah.
I like that Scheer is providing like a commentary on the thesis of Blank Check.
I like that Scheer is it's like when Kevin Smith came on the show and was like, so what is the premise? And we sort of explaining, he was like, yeah, sure, I get it. Right. Like people get kind of a blank check at a certain point. Right. Yeah.
But that was also because that record was his first time listening to
listening to us speak. He's heard you speak.
He's heard me talk. Yeah. But no, McTiernan, early on, we were like, well, who's got a better rise and fall arc than the guy who ends up in movie jail and American jail?
Literal jail.
U.S.
Literal jail.
Right.
I mean, which is interesting because when he talks about Last Action Hero, he says it's the worst experience he's ever had in the business. And I would imagine the wiretapping would be the worst
That would be my personal worst experience.
Man.
Was hiring Anthony Pellicano. If I had lived his life, that would be my bottom. That would be my nadir.
I'm sure you guys have talked about this in the series so far, but I can't help but recommend the documentary Sin Eater, The Crimes of Anthony Pellicano.
We will be covering Sin Eater, The Crimes of Anthony Pellicano on our Patreon. Because,
Jason,
yes, exactly, because you told us to check
we
it
got
out.
drinks some months ago when you were in the city and told you we were doing McTiernan, and you waxed poetic to us about Sin Eater, and we went... We must devote an entire episode to it. We also found it's a little hard to get the proper amount of Pellicano context just jammed into a rollerball episode.
Oh, well, yeah. The rollerball, we did rollerball on How Did This Get Made? And I tried to break down that scandal. And thankfully, Jason was very versed in it as well. But it's thorny. It's a lot. A lot is going on.
Horny and thorny is Pellicano's whole thing.
Do you guys like rollerball? We have, I guess that episode we'll post later, but yeah, where are you guys on rollerball 2002?
I don't think we cared for it, to be honest.
No.
Like it seemed like a real
issues.
miss.
You didn't love it?
Yeah, had some issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about McTiernan. McTiernan, I feel like, is one of those people. I think the other person that you can put in this category of relatively few films, almost all of them bangers, until there are real disasters in there. The other one is Martin Brest.
Yes.
Brest is a classic, like you can just draw a line. Here's the thing with McTiernan. His other bombs are Medicine Man, I guess.
Yeah.
But was that a bomb?
It didn't do well and nobody liked it.
It was an underperformer.
Okay.
But not on the level of the other bombs, which are 13th Warrior, Rollerball, where it's like reviled, imprisonment, most expensive movie or whatever. This is his only bomb, and this is a famous bomb.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of people later being like, oh, actually, underrated.
That's what I want to say. He's such a feast or famine filmmaker that it's like when he made a hit, it worked on every single level. Everyone loved it.
Right.
It has aged well.
Predator, Die Hard, Red October.
Critically, commercially well regarded.
Right.
And his flops are the same. Basic we will get to, which is sort of the weird outlier. This feels like the only one of his movies that has like, quote unquote, a complicated legacy.
Yeah, I've seen people say 13th Warrior is okay, but basically nobody likes any of those movies. But people like this movie.
The thing about this movie, in my opinion, and this is, just so you know, the only movie that I walked out on.
You walked out, right. In 1993.
When it came in theaters.
When it came out in 1993, I walked out of the theater as a child.
How old are you?
It actually was a problem. The police were called.
High school at this point, and I remember sitting in the theater. It was like pretty empty, and going, I don't like this.
And at that point in your life, you usually liked movies. Like if you saw a movie, you were on board.
Movies.
Right.
I love movies, and I walked a couple aisles back. Like I was gonna leave, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll just go back a little bit more. And I sat down again, and it was like around a little bit after the first police precinct, and I was like, I think I'm gonna leave. Okay, I'm gonna leave. I really talked myself out. I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't know they didn't know you couldn't like movies, and I walked out.
I like that you first tried to give the movie a little space. You were like,
yes.
maybe
I'm
if I
too
just
close.
kind of let it.
Maybe I'm too close. I got to back up a little. Let it really sink in.
Let it take a minute to get to me. Like,
Yeah. Like, maybe just take a breath and here we go. And that's how I remember this film.
Yeah.
And then in rewatching it, I was like, oh, this is just too smart for where we were at 1993. Like, I feel like it's
too soon. Yeah.
It's too soon. If this came out now, and it would be a big hit. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I think I have perhaps more problems with it than you guys might. But I think the other thing this movie had against it was something that existed at the time of this movie's release that simply doesn't exist now in the same way, which was this movie had aggressive bad press.
Yeah.
Yes.
This movie arrived as a stinker.
It was an overcooked turkey on delivery.
We were being told this is a bomb. This is a mess. This is bloated. This is over budget. This is not good. It was like from the jump, it was arrived as a turkey. And it also, because I just looked up some of the stuff, I had forgotten it is released the second week of Jurassic Park.
Oh, well, we're going to get into all this.
No, we're not going to get into it because I'm bringing it up right now.
All right.
We're not going to get into it later.
This film was bodied by dinosaurs. Yes, that was a huge issue.
The other thing is, to your point, like it's arriving, being presented by the press as a turkey, but also arriving with like the most aggressive marketing campaign for any studio film up until that point. It's being sold so hard. The tagline for this movie was the big ticket for 93. I watched so many ads on YouTube this morning and last night, including their like Burger King tie-in, where all of them just keep saying the biggest movie of 1993. Like their tagline was basically telling you this thing is going to be a huge hit. And then simultaneously, the press for months leading up to it was like, PU,
it was like
bomb
they're burning the test cards.
Yes.
But I have like an issue with that because look at James Cameron. Every one of his films went through that same cycle. It's going to be a flop. It's going to be a failure. True. It's the most expensive movie ever.
Yep.
And then it comes out and it works. And and people go crazy for it.
James Cameron, literally, despite his long track record of success, always has like nobody believes in me syndrome every time he releases a movie.
You can feel it already happening for Avatar 3.
And every movie is the most expensive movie ever made.
Yes.
It's always like,
it's always like he spent more than anything on a thing that sounds insane. He releases it and people are like, I kind of loved it. I don't know if everyone else will though. And then it makes $2 billion. And they're like, but the next one is a folly. You're right, Griffin.
I mean, truly, like 14 months ago, Avatar 2 became the third highest grossing movie in history.
Right.
And I already feel people are saying, yeah, but who wants to see Avatar 3?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen again. People are going to be like, name me an Avatar character.
Yeah.
I feel like the guys on Slash Film were talking about this for years.
Yes.
Like, that Avatar has no cultural relevance whatsoever. It has left no cultural footprint. Kids don't dress up as the Na'vi for Halloween.
Right.
There is no real awareness or no catchphrases. It's not baked into our culture at all. And then, so what's the point of these Avatar sequels? And then, of course, the point is made every time they will release one, it will make $1 billion, $2 billion.
A thing I find so funny is that justifiably, right? Top Gun Maverick and Barbie / Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer gets so much credit for like, those are the 2/3 movies that saved the movies. And in between those, Avatar The Way of Water comes out and outgrosses all of them.
Right. It's
all
true.
Of them.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's a very bizarre thing because I also feel like there's a truth that in America does not have a cultural relevance. I think that he makes great world movies too. Like, and that's something that is hard to do. Like, everyone loves it. It works everywhere.
Yep.
You know, and that is, you know, that's why it makes that much money as well. It's not like it took, like, Top Gun, the energy of Top Gun is Top Gun 2. It was so much bigger than Avatar 2. Like, it just was, like, in the States. I know it made Avatar made more money, but it's like, it is interesting, like, how you could be that successful, but also still not have that energy.
Yes. But this is very much a movie, Last Action Hero, which is staking itself on, like, if we don't have that sort of cultural permanence, this thing is a disaster. It's a movie that is aiming for something so big where it's like, this needs to be the biggest hit of the year. This needs to be culturally revolutionary, or else we failed. And to not just have it underperform.
It flopped.
To have it outright
flopped.
Oh, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Yes.
This movie essentially is culturally situated almost as a sequel to all of the movies from the 7 years prior. It is the bloated sequel to all of the McTiernan, Rennie Harlan, like all of the action movies of this era.
Right. It's sequel apex to a phenomenon in American cinema for the last decade plus.
Mm-hmm.
It is Schwarzenegger playing every hero and role in one man, but also it's Schwarzenegger kind of being like, I'm expanding my audience.
Well, Schwarzenegger's had 2 tracks at this point, both of which have been wildly successful, which is Schwarzenegger family comedy and Schwarzenegger, ultra-violent action star.
Right.
And this is the movie where he's trying to unite them
It'll
both.
be together.
It's like the Avengers of everything that Schwarzenegger does in one
So
movie.
much so that when he releases the toy, he doesn't want the toy to have a gun.
Yes.
right.
Like it comes with dumbbells and things like that. Like,
Right.
which is crazy because this
we're gonna
movie
get to it. We're
is
gonna
about,
get
I
to
mean,
it.
he has a song by AC/DC called Big Cannon, or
Yes.
is it?
I think it's literally called Big Gun. Am I wrong?
Big Gun. No, you're right. Yeah, it is Big Gun. Right. So you have a song by AC/DC called Big Gun that he made them write for the film. The movie is about a guy who shoots a very large
The
gun.
movie has a lot of gun violence in it. I'm just gonna call that out.
But he's so aware. You're right, Jason. Like, he's so aware of, like, I am a role model now. I am like a figure of like American heroism. This is the era where he's really deep into, like, I am promoting exercise and wellness alongside the president of the United States. I'm going on TV. This is when he's clearly starting to build the bridge in his mind to eventually being governor.
Yeah, he married a Kennedy,
Right.
who's in this film.
He does that joke about the governor in the very beginning. He's like, tell me when the governor gets
And
there
Maria
after he
Shriver
punches.
gives an incredible performance in this.
Maria Shriver's really good in this.
He's really establishing himself as a wholesome, like,
Yes.
this is the version of the movie that is, it is PG-13. There is no love interest. These movies traditionally have like exploitative elements, they are running through a strip club during a car. They drive the car into a strip club, or, the kinds of movies that this movie is aping or paying homage to are shoot 'em up, the Shane Black movies of this era ironically, Shane Black does a pass at this script, but this script is not Shane Blacky in really any way.
Well, besides it takes place at Christmas.
Does it?
Well,
Jack
twice.
Slater
because,
3 takes place at Christmas.
but
Oh,
remember when they go to his house.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And the kids on the bicycle going down, there's Christmas lights all up and down that block. So, I mean, they don't embrace it, but it's still there.
If I'm Child Protective Services in the early 90s, I gotta pay Mercedes Rule a visit. She's losing sons in every movie.
Let's just say
There's a break-in.
Yes,
The kid
yes.
is handcuffed to a toilet.
Yes.
The bank robber steals what little they own while reaming the kid out for not owning anything of value.
Your stuff sucks.
He's taken to the precinct, and the cop says, "So your mom will be home soon. You can go home before her."
Yeah.
He doesn't even say
Yes.
she'll pick you up here.
Yeah.
Anyway, just noting that.
She loses sons to magical realism in both this and Big in a way that is like sketchy.
Yeah.
So you think Rule herself should just kind of
I'm suspect. I'm suspect. She's too good at this.
Eye off the
Did you
ball.
watch the alternate ending of the film?
No.
All right. So I bought this on 4K Blu-ray.
Me too.
You get the Steelbook?
I have the Steelbook.
Steelbook, yes.
Okay.
And the alternate ending is Mercedes Rule. So it's the same thing where Nick, the movie theater projectionist, says, "Oh, I once saw Billy the Kid," or whatever he says, and they walk out.
Clearly, you were entranced by this line. Yes, they walk out.
Yeah.
I will say that's Robert Prosky,
It
who
is.
I just want to say is like one of the iconic character actors of this
He-
era.
he's a
Amazing.
king.
We're
He's a
pinning
king.
20 minutes of Prosky talk for later in the
It's
episode.
going to be 2 to 3 minutes.
and originally written as the devil.
The
Oh,
character
what?
in this was supposed to be the devil?
Yes,
Wow.
that was the magical part of it. He was the devil giving this
Jesus.
ticket, and because
Cool.
the original movie, Extremely Violent, was like a hard.
Was
R.
it-
We
That
will
yeah,
was-
talk
Zach
about
Penn.
the Zach Penn
Yeah,
script.
sorry.
Yeah.
But-
yeah.
Did you guys read the Zach Penn script?
No, I know
Got
it's
it.
available to be read.
Okay.
But wait, Paul.
just curious.
Tell us about the alternate ending. Then I'm gonna
Yes.
I'm gonna uncork the dossier.
David's already getting so annoyed. David is already, and we're only in hour 1, and this episode is guaranteed to be 4.5
Jason, don't
hours.
make any guarantees.
There's been a
David?
It is
week-long
Martin
back and
Luther
forth
King Day.
David?
of how much time is being
I
carved out
have
for this
rolled
record.
from moving houses into the holiday season into having COVID. I have basically been locked in my house for a month with my child.
And what the listener is unaware of is that we talked for, I'm going to say, a solid 20 minutes before we
easily.
started
Of course.
rolling
Yeah,
about how to
that's-
fix the Mission Impossible movies and the Fast and Furious movies, a conversation
solutions.
you, dear listeners, will never hear.
You're never
At
gonna
which
hear that
point,
one.
David was then annoyed.
I was
Very
nervy.
annoyed. Yeah.
I was nervy.
By the way, we had all the answers. We have it all figured out for both franchises.
Oh yeah.
But David, I'll tell you this. We're recording this on Martin Luther King Jr.'s day, and my kids are in camp, and I definitely am watching that clock because I know they're getting out of parkour camp at a certain time, and things have to, there are things that have to get going.
I'm glad they're in parkour camp though. That's a good skill. That's
look, they have to learn that for the future of humanity.
Every kid in LA has to learn parkour.
Yeah.
So the alternate end of the movie, as the Nick, the ticket taker, escorts him out, we cut outside the theater, and there's Mercedes Rule, and she's like, huh, where were you? As a matter of fact, don't tell me. I don't want to know until I'm on my deathbed. Then I'll be full of Demerol, and it won't make any sense, and it'll be okay. I'm just happy you're back. And it's such a weird...
That sounds bizarre.
It didn't. This doesn't work. It's a weird ending. You don't need to see the mom again, but it's such a downer of an ending because you're kind of reminded that this kid
has a fairly shitty life that has not been
really
addressed.
shitty life.
Right?
No, nothing's been fixed.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No.
He doesn't walk away with anything. He wasn't even a kid who was shy.
This is the kind of movie that I wish there was a companion movie to that was just a heartbreaking drama thriller starring Mercedes Rule about where is her son.
Like Marvin's Room or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Like pre-Giuliani New York, just sort of tooling around.
He was just here.
Yeah.
He was just here. He's at that movie theater. I know it. He's with that damn projectionist.
Right. And the social
kid
workers
never
are like,
existed.
I'm sorry, he hangs out with an 80-year-old projectionist all day.
Houdini's ticket? I should say...
I mean, it's not dissimilar from Marty McFly hanging out with.
It's not.
No.
It makes more sense because Prosky actually something to offer this kid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Magic.
Yes.
Magic,
Yes.
but also free movie
Movies.
Sure.
Free movies.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I should say this is a miniseries on the films of John McTiernan. It's called
sure.
Pod Hard with Avenge Cast.
Correct.
And when you say you can't believe, Paul, that it took us this long to cover McTiernan, I don't want to say this is the reason we held off on it, but it is one of those things that when we mention to people, in the past we've gone, McTiernan's a dream series, or when people have asked us who's coming up next, and I say McTiernan, they go, who's that? What did he make?
Oh, yeah.
Versus most of the people we've covered, he is fascinating for how big his career was, how high his highs, how low his lows. It is a pretty deep level of film fan who actually knows him by name,
right,
and holds all that together in one career. And if you say to people, this dude, his second through fourth movies were, in order, Predator, Die Hard, and Hunt for Red October, they go, oh shit, so he was like the greatest action filmmaker of all time. And you go, and then he made Last Action Hero. You see people in real time short circuit of, wait, they hired the guy who made those movies to parody himself, which is the whole thing about this film that is fascinating, is, as you said, it's like, let's get Schwarzenegger, Shane Black, and John McTiernan to make the film making fun of the thing they have.
Right. I think
the script was written by, Zach Penn studied Shane Black's scripts to match the rhythms. I mean, they use the same musical riffs, which I absolutely love.
I think that was part of the reaction at the time. It was like, you cannot have your cake and eat it too.
Calls
and I think
coming from inside the house.
Right. And I think critics in 93 especially were just sort of like, you have been ruining movies. Now, we look back on these movies with a lot of love.
Golden age.
But I think, at that time, there was kind of like, oh God, the 80s were so crass and vulgar. These guys are emblematic of that. Like, this is, you don't get to then be like, ha ha ha, didn't we have a great time? And we knew we were doing the whole time. Like, they can't do that.
Well, I mean, it's so funny because even, I was reading a bunch of stuff about this. Like, Schwarzenegger blamed Bill Clinton for this movie's failure.
Yes.
Crazy.
I mean, that's wild. That's wild. I think to be like, oh, Bill Clinton likes highfalutin movies, and he kind of,
he's such an odd house freak.
He's gone to see Secret and Lies 5 times.
It is funny how I think it's impossible for us to engage with, obviously, the culture wars of 93, sincerely, but Clinton's whole thing was, oh yeah, I'm a man of the people. I play the sax, I eat French fries, right? But like Republicans still tried to be like, this, lace curtain elite motherfucker. He's reading books, wearing glass. He went to Oxford University.
Tom Clancy.
no.
He's a Rhodes Scholar. Meanwhile, he's eating like old mac and cheese out of a boot.
Right. Like, meanwhile, it's like he lives inside a barbecue pit. Like, was the sort of like Arkansas version. Anyway.
But I wanted to say something about McTiernan, and you probably have already talked about this a little bit, but there was a time that action directors were a little bit more faceless. Like, and I do think that like Christopher McQuarrie is in that camp in an interesting way. Like, it's like, oh no, I just make movies, and that's it. You like, I don't think people know these names, and it's interesting. Like their movies have the legacy, but their careers are kind of second to the film.
Well, I think that generation kind of is comparable to the journeyman directors that then became like the bedrock of the Western.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like John Ford, Howard Hawks.
Yeah.
These are all directors who are making all sorts of movies in all sorts of genres, but then become the kind of like the people who absolutely establish what it is to be a Western, right? In that era of stuff.
And these guys who have this mentality of, it's a gig, I'm making entertainment, I'm not taking my work too seriously, but I work very seriously. I am an artist. I have a high level of understanding of craft, and I have a point of view.
You're Walter Hills, you're John Frankenheimers, you're like, who else? Joe Dante.
Those people then are called auteurs and are revered as auteurs in that way that then later I feel like people would then look at Tony Scott,
right?
Or or Ridley Scott.
Of it, yeah.
Tony Scott is well, McTiernan I feel like is oftentimes people will think Tony Scott directed. Who do you think directed Die Hard?
No, you're exactly right, and I think Tony Scott is probably more notorious now than he was in the 90s.
Yes, most of these guys we're talking about, it takes a full 20 years before they start getting reclaimed as like, this is actually a serious filmmaker, quote unquote.
Right. So I saw Paul gave this 4 stars on Letterboxd. So I know Paul likes Last Action Hero. Griffin, I'm assuming you like Last Action Hero.
I'll unpack this more thoroughly, but I watched this on cable when I was probably 15, having heard it was a notorious disaster. And I was like, I half like this. It's a mess, but I kind of get it. I had not seen it again until last night. I kind of unabashedly love this movie now. I think it's misshapen and left-handed, but I love this thing.
I have notes for this movie, but I largely appreciate it.
I'd probably give it 4 stars as well.
Jason, it sounds like you're maybe more mixed.
I'm more mixed, and I think I'm more mixed partially because as the oldest person here, this movie comes out when I'm in my 20s, so I am very much receiving the information that it's bad. And I'm at that age predisposed to not want to like these big blockbuster movies.
I'm in an arty phase.
I'm in my Christoph Kozlowski phase.
You're in your Bill Clinton era.
I'm going to the Brattle Theater to watch the Decalogue.
Hell yeah. Shout out to the Brattle, still a great theater.
One of the greatest franchises, of course, the Decalogue.
The Decalogue, of course. Arnie tried to remake it. But I do think also this movie's coming out, and in 1993, imagine seeing this movie that is essentially giving this kind of like golden hued nostalgia to movies like Commando.
Right.
At the time, you must have been like, this is horseshit. That movie came out 6 years ago. Now you can watch it and you're like, I too am nostalgic for Commando.
Absolutely.
That's right. And it would be playing in a crumbling movie hall and like, I love the power of cinema. In 93, that sounded stupid, I'm sure.
That's one of the things that I do want to point out is like, this is one of the last of those movies that is kind of romanticizing going to the movies, the Cinema Palace,
the big theater, yes,
Cinema Paradiso.
Right. Yes.
This era, there's a bunch of movies in this time frame that are people loving and worshiping going to the movies, and that is just done after this.
I have a question for you.
Producer Ben is on the mic?
Producer Ben's on mic. He's behind the computer monitor, but he's on mic.
Yes.
Ben, how long are we into the record right now?
30 minutes, depending on how much of that beginning impression we cut out.
Why do you ask that, Griffin?
Will you give me a heads up when we're at an hour?
Why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
Just
Why?
pinning a joke.
Last action hero. I'm going to actually look at the dossier here. So, as you guys have mentioned, Zach Penn and Adam Leff, who get a story credit on this film, they wrote the original script here. They met at Wesleyan.
They say the only scene left from their script is the Hamlet scene,
which is funny.
Which is
to have Joan Plowright, Laurence Olivier's wife, be their teacher who's showing them an Olivier Hamlet performance. This movie is so on a level of scale and scope so enormous for people and places and sets and everything that they have Joan Plowright in for that one scene.
It has
just to do that joke.
Budget and clout to make every joke the biggest version of the joke.
Yes. I watched this with commentary. The commentary, it sounded like, was recorded in 2021 for this 4K release. So it's very recent. And McTiernan basically makes it clear he has not rewatched the movie since it came out. So a lot of it he's rediscovering. It's a very sad, contemplative commentary that's pretty fascinating. But a term he uses 5 times in a derogatory sense is gigantism. This movie suffered from gigantism. And it's interesting that he isn't saying like overblown. He's saying gigantism as if it's like a pituitary disease, a hormone issue where you are overproducing size. And like Joan Plowright's the best version of that, where you're like, we want to joke about this kid being bored by the Olivier Hamlet and imagining the Schwarzenegger Hamlet. Why not dust off Laurence Olivier's widow?
Oh, this movie is favors. This movie is more favors.
Oh, I don't even know if it's favors. I think they're just paying people.
Yeah.
You've got Sharon Stone walking out of the police station as the Basic Instinct character.
But that's Esterhaus. I mean, that's this whole movie.
And Schwarzenegger.
I heard
he
that
worked with Total Recall.
That, you know what? Give me this movie. Give me this movie directed by Verhoeven. Give me this movie as a toxic send-up of these kinds of movies versus the...
By the way, give me the movie, give me the James Cameron version of this movie, and it's a million times better. I think.
So the Penn and Leff script, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a movie about the toxic heart of these kinds of movies, right? They... Just to go into their little careers, they had written a movie about a monstrous rat rampaging through Central Park, which they hope would get them an agent. It did not. I just like the sound of that, just FYI. They do Robert McKee's screenwriting course, and they write a film called Extremely Violent, and they joke that it should be called Reverse Purple Rose because it's the Purple Rose of Cairo in reverse. Rather than someone coming out of a movie, you go into the movie. Wouldn't it be funny to get sucked into an action movie?
And wouldn't it be a nightmare to live in this sort of modern type of action movie, this excess that we've heightened to? Yes. And then basically design it as like a calling card script to get their foot in the door. Don't think they'll ever realistically get it produced. But over time they start like...
It's an exercise, this script.
Exactly.
Because it's them watching every action movie and being like, okay, what are the tropes? We have to put every single one in here.
And yes, and as you said, Paul, they're both watching these movies and they're like finding copies of Shane Black's script so they can read how he wrote them. So they can even riff on his structure as like a typist.
The script gets retitled The Last Action Hero. It ends up to Columbia's VP of production and future friend of Griffin Newman, Barry Josephson.
Correct. Producer of The Tick and Disenchanted.
He basically pitches it to Schwarzenegger as a vehicle, as you say, the joke of why don't you play the joke character that is a spoof of you.
And they had written the script. They throw it out to every studio. You know, at this point, they've made friends with readers, with secretaries, with assistants at all the studios. So they're getting it in front of people, whereas the Rat script couldn't even get seen. And everyone who reads it is kind of like, impressive exercise. You can't actually make this. And I think the thing that every studio other than Columbia clocks is like, this thing is going to have really difficult tones to manage because it kind of has the internal heart of like a children's fantasy movie done in ultra-violent style. Those two things are going to be really hard to put together versus Columbia sees it and goes like, this is $1 billion concept for a movie. Even if we don't love this script, this idea is fucking out of control sellable.
Well, because I think that they probably see the cameos, they see the connections, they see ways that they can advertise other movies. I mean, the fact that I left this movie going, oh, I should rewatch Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Like, it's there. It's
quite present in this film. Yes.
Oh, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
Seventh Seal.
You could see like a Columbia exec going, you know what? If the movie's good, we could take that Danny DeVito animated cat and make a whole movie with that one too.
Whiskers?
You know, like Whisker, I love Whiskers.
Barry Josephson, also producer of Dirty Grandpa, which I was in.
Oh, yes.
Whenever I go to like dinner or drinks with Barry and a waitress comes over, I go like, hey, I just want you to be aware of who you're serving. This is the producer of Dirty Grandpa. I always embarrass him by doing that.
The best.
I just want to tell you guys that when this project comes to Schwarzenegger, he's deciding he's king of the world, right? This is right after, Terminator 2. He's deciding between a million projects. Some of them, a Ron Howard directed Curious George.
Insane.
Which never happened.
Curious George, one of those things that kicked around for 20 years where studios were like, if one of us can crack this is
George,
the ultimate hit. But like Brad Bird almost does it at one point as CGI live action hybrid. It doesn't happen until they make an animated movie that basically doesn't exist.
Another movie he's thinking about doing is a famous spec script called Cop Gives Waitress $2 Million Tip, which of course eventually is made into a film called It Could Happen to You, starring Nicolas Cage.
Right.
The biggest competition is another Columbia movie called Sweet Tooth, which is made in 2010 as the Dwayne Johnson film The Tooth Fairy.
Oh, yes.
Which makes The Tooth Fairy make a lot more sense that The Rock just goes like, what are the scripts that Arnold almost made but didn't 15 years ago? And
dust
pulls
those off.
Yep. Makes perfect sense.
Schwarzenegger, however, goes for Last Action Hero because he thinks this is a family-friendly movie and, quote, the country is going in an anti-violence direction. So he thinks a sort of satirical, family-friendly version of an action movie is the pivot he needs to make.
Well, Terminator
rather than a movie where he blows people's head off with a bazooka.
Terminator 2 is the hardcore, ultra-violent, R-rated version of an Arnold family movie, right?
Because in that movie even, he says, I don't want to kill any. Like, they make him not kill anyone, right? So he's always shooting people in the legs and arms. Right.
But his thing is, there's no body count. When Cameron gives him the script, he's like, what are you doing? I don't kill anybody. I'm the Terminator. I've got to kill people.
Well, but then I think he realizes, this is so ingenious. And he's parodying this in this movie as well, because he's talking about that, like when he's on the red carpet line, Schwarzenegger is in the Last Action Hero premiere at the end of the movie. He's like, in the first movie, we killed 148 people. This one we kill like 68.
Yeah.
He's like, and it's like he's parodying that, but he's aware of it. Like he's aware and he's trying to, I think, address it.
He's aware that the culture is shifting around him. And if he wants to have his cake and eat it too, and remain some sort of action star, he needs to find a way to evolve it. And he needs to like unify the two sides of his film career.
But it's weird because you're talking about a guy who's like Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, Terminator 2, Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
At this point, he hasn't felt the juniors, the Jingle All the Ways.
No,
he hasn't
that comes
felt
later.
that. Yeah. And so it's like he's on a high.
After this movie, he kind of bifurcates where it's like, I'm going to do Jingle All the Way in Junior, but I'm also going to do Eraser and True Lies.
True Lies.
Like he goes back into like, I have my grown-up movies and my kids' movies and never the twain shall meet again.
He really only makes one hit film after this film in his entire career, which is True Lies.
Yeah.
Everything else is between qualified hit and disaster.
Right.
Like something like Eraser, it's like, yeah, that's a qualified hit. That did fine.
Yes.
But like he never actually experiences Arnie level success after True Lies.
No, we think of him as the king of the 90s and he's basically cooked by 95. True Lies is like a farewell tour, like one final time with your best director, go out doing the kind of thing we all love seeing you do. And then he immediately becomes Man at a Time, which this movie sort of feels like he's seeing is coming for him. Right?
Culture at this point, culture is in this very moment shifting underneath us, right? Like all of the big bombastic movies of this era, the shoot 'em up, crazy violence, are all going away for a different, quieter, smaller movies in the same way that Nirvana and all of the alternative bands in the early 90s are supplanting all of the big bombast of hair metal and the Guns N' Roses and the Poisons and all of the crazy, enormous, pyrotechnic nonsense is giving way to much smaller acts, much more, meat and, like not big meat and potatoes, but like really alternative indie bands that are suddenly thrust into the limelight. And all of the Arnolds and Slys are suddenly like the same as, Poison. They are like, oh, this is bloated and big.
I also think the other thing is like when the first Die Hard comes out in 88, like Bruce is such a weird counterpoint to Stallone and Schwarzenegger as the model of who an action star is, right? And even the second and third tier guys behind Stallone and Schwarzenegger are like Van Damme and Chuck Norris trying to do the similar thing. And McClane is like, this is a normal guy. He's got a shitty hairline. He's not in perfect shape, right? He talks like a real person stuck in one of these movies. He's funny, but in a way that doesn't feel like wildly scripted. And he's more relatable.
Well, he also he runs away.
Totally.
He flees at times.
He's from Moonlighting. I mean, it is Moonlighting.
It's David Addison,
Yeah.
But there's this sort of slow release, even though that movie is 88 and it's a big hit and they make sequels quickly. It's like by the mid 90s, someone like Bruckheimer is really starting to go like, oh no, we should put Nicolas Cage in our action movie. We shouldn't hire action stars. We should hire good actors, and especially actors who are kind of funny, and put an unconventional guy at the center of this to make them a little off kilter. And the idea of the cartoon
Park.
man.
The stars of Jurassic Park are Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum.
Right. And that's the other thing that's happening at this point is like the IP is bigger than the star. The idea is bigger than the star. Spielberg considers doing Jurassic Park with Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. And then he's like, the star's the dinosaurs. Why would I pay for those guys if I can just get good actors?
Well, I think that the other thing that I'm fascinated by with Schwarzenegger is he does have the right instincts. He doesn't always hit the target. I think if you were going to compare him to Stallone, Stallone doesn't know what works.
No.
Stallone is throwing himself here and there. And, the famous story about the reason why he did, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot was because Schwarzenegger kind of tricked him into it. But Schwarzenegger right away is like, okay, I'm this guy. I'm this big hulking man. How do I gravitate? How do I open up my audiences? Like he's trying very hard not to just be the bad guy. He's open to doing comedy. He's open to like having people laugh at him. Like, I think there's an ego thing with Schwarzenegger where it's like, I know I'm the best. I know I'm the biggest, like body-wise person. I know I'm attractive. I know I can handle this. He's got an ego about him, and that he doesn't matter, like, that people can make fun of him.
Yeah.
And so
I think that there's a way also in which I think he is clearly, and if you watch the documentary that came out about him on Netflix recently or whatever, like, I think Schwarzenegger is a businessman. He is a very smart, astute businessman.
Yes.
Of all these people.
Totally understands how to approach his career from a business point of view, whereas Stallone thinks of himself as an artist.
Yes.
He is an artist with all of the insecurities and pettiness that comes along with being an artist.
That's why Vin Diesel is Stallone and Dwayne Johnson
Correct.
is Schwarzenegger. Like, both sort of generic brand versions in a way, but
Paul, you're right that there is this fascinating sort of lack of ego with him, or an ego that is subservient. Schwarzenegger, that is subservient
Not
to his
Stallone.
No, to his business. No, Stallone is like overcome with the ego.
Yes.
But Schwarzenegger has this thing of like, I know people are making fun of me, that they are going to make fun of me. I'm not trying to stop that or fight that. I want to get rich off of
It's very
the jokes.
funny. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
If someone's going to make money off of making fun of me, then it's going to be me, It's the part of him that thinks about doing the Hans and Franz movie, where he's like, if these guys are making fun of me on SNL, then I should do a feature film with them where I am cooler than they are.
It's him coming up to Ivan Reitman in a restaurant and after Ghostbusters and saying, I want to be a Ghostbuster.
Yes.
Like he is like, that's in that Last Action Heroes book, that story.
Yeah.
Like Schwarzenegger understands, like, I want to get in on that.
Yeah.
Like I can.
But I think, and when you put him with the right person, whether it's James Cameron or whether it's Ivan Reitman for
Officer
the
Whiskers.
first. Yeah. You get this really perfect, you hit a home run. And I think that the problem with this was he was smart to say, I want to be involved in this. And this movie then gets pulled by people, like you were saying earlier, who don't really get the joke. It's like they get it enough, but they're not outside of it to actually like you needed like it needed to be produced by them or something. I don't know, like they're like because the idea of the devil character, like the devil character of the ticket taker, like the idea was like the devil wants kids to watch these movies because it makes them violent, right? Which is something that those producers are never going to put in the film because they're like, no, we're not poisoning the youth of this country. We're the good guys. And, you know, so all the satire starts to kind of go off on the side a little bit. You know, I think the movie, even the original script, which you'd never see, but ended with the little kid going like on a shooting rampage, taking out his anger at his fucked up life on all these bad guys.
Right. Before
which,
he realizes, yes, there was a deep morality to the film, like an angry morality.
A cynicism. Right. When McTiernan talks about the gigantism of this movie and so much the commentary, I sent you guys a photo that was just the subtitles on the commentary was parenthetical size. Then the studio decided they wanted it to be the biggest movie of all time, you know? And he just keeps on saying that of just like, it got too big. It got too big. And so much of that is like, all of them saying, it's really funny that we're going to make this parody of giant movies. Can we also simultaneously make it bigger than all the movies we're parodying in a way that feels very based in like a dick measuring contest?
But let me say this.
It's not just it takes the money to make the joke. It's that like we also want to compete.
But John McTiernan has made a lot of films that are poorly regarded. And we've actually discussed almost all of them. The way we've been recording this, we've discussed kind of his flops first.
Yeah.
He's always got some fucking excuse.
No, of course.
He is not, in like the research, he is not a director who's like, you know what? I should have done this, or I should have. Instead, he's always like, it's the studio's fault. It's the writer's fault.
Right.
You know, they did this, they did that. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Like, you know, and I'm always just like, Johnny.
That was his attitude at the trial. The trial, he had the same thing. It was like, well, I wouldn't have done that unless they did that. Like,
so with this one, it's like they wanted it too big. With Rollerball, Rollerball is just. We will get to that. We've recorded that episode. Spoiler alert! It is a litany of him being like, I did this. I'm like, that's why the movie's bad.
Those are all
like,
the bad decisions.
Anyway, the studio's problem was, and I'm like, no, it's you. Sometimes it's you.
I will say though, this commentary,
I'm sure,
especially the fact that it was recorded recently.
Yeah,
there are like 6 major things that he blames himself for.
Okay,
he's
glad
actually
he's taking.
He is harder on himself than this on this movie today than I expected. Than he seems to be on any of his other films.
Right, because this movie, he actually should kind of be like, well, look. It's come around a little bit. Yeah.
Some people defend it. He was really hard on himself. He throws at the gigantism thing a lot. And he's like, but that was sort of a bet I shouldn't have gotten into, or I should have found a way to fight this or whatever. But
just so tempted by your cricket.
I got a noisy cricket. Take the noisy cricket.
Just love it. Look at it.
It's the noisy cricket from Men in Black.
All right, let me okay. So,
I will say the joy of you guys being in a 2-shot is like watching you two play like David's I wish people could watch David's physicality.
We talk about
how
flapping a
how
lot.
frustrated he is at not being able to get in while we're just absolutely monologuing.
All right.
Apologies, David.
All right, I love you all very, very deeply, but I do want to say Schwarzenegger comes aboard, and this is definitely the turning point moment that you're kind of, you know, that McTiernan is talking about. He's like, let's have Shane Black rewrite this. Yeah. Which is this weird, someone should sit him down maybe and be like, no. This is a parody of a Shane Black script. Right. Hiring the most expensive writer in Hollywood to rewrite a parody of himself is maybe not the move.
That's the other thing McTiernan says is like, at this point, Schwarzenegger just represents big. He's the biggest guy. He's
and Black
huge.
gets $1 million to rewrite this movie
and
because that's what he is.
Schwarzenegger is like at this moment the best star at selling his own movies and selling his own image.
Schwarzenegger, obviously, Black is in Predator. Like he knows him. Like,
but they're also like collapsing forward into these movies are now not Predator, not Commando, not T1 or T2. These movies are now kids' movies.
Yes.
This movie is through the eyes of a 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy.
Mhm.
What is he in this?
Yeah, he's like 12.
12. He was 12 when he shot the movie.
Right.
Okay, so that's what these movies have now become. It was one thing when action movies were like hyper violent, R-rated, like
for grown-ups,
what we're talking about, Die Hard, Lethal Weapon. These are stories about like bad guys and good guys and the moral
There are also
gray
stories
in
about like
between.
marriages,
Broken
and, like,
adults.
right?
Yes.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like grappling with depression.
And there are stories about Vietnam veterans,
Right,
as everybody in this era is. These are stories about men who've come home from war and how that has managed to fuck them up powerfully.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
they're grown-up
that's an
movies.
element too. And here we have what I don't like about Last Action Hero is that it is a kids movie. It is primarily a kids movie.
It is,
A kid's point of view on these movies.
Well, now let me just say that I did watch this movie with my children.
Humble brag.
I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
I thought, okay, I'm in copyright hell right now for my book. I had 5 days to edit my entire thing. So I need to figure out time to watch this movie before this podcast. And I looked at this film and I said, well, kids, we're going to watch this together. This is going to be a family movie night.
Yeah.
Now, my wife is not home, thankfully, so I could pop this in and watch their faces as they watch this movie. A movie that opens with a decidedly terrifying scene. The Ripper on the roof with
the Ripper,
children.
if you're
murdering.
7 years old, Tom Noonan does not like half sell that.
No,
Like,
Ripper.
yeah.
No. So we watch this movie and they go bananas for it.
Right.
Wow.
My child who hates film,
Mhm.
like he hates film, like
The art form.
he once said to me, Dad, there's a kid on my basketball team who's like you. And I go, oh yeah, why? And he goes, he likes movies. And I'm like,
Sick
and I
freak.
go, what's that? Like that? That's not a weird thing. I like movies. Like, yeah, whatever. I'm like,
I want to go on record as saying Paul's son is a bully and Paul's son bullies me. He bullies me for liking movies and comic books.
Wow.
So he
Wait, I'm just out of curiosity, Paul. Have they seen have you shown them Lethal Weapon or Die
Oh
Hard
God,
or any
no,
of
no.
those? Okay,
They haven't seen a single Marvel movie.
Got it.
Right. They
haven't
haven't seen
any-
anything in this tone, really.
No, the most that they have seen that
Wow.
They've seen all the animated films out there.
Sure.
Elf is big, Home Alone is big. Home Alone kind of is a Die Hard. But Goonies, like they're not seeing a lot of live action, honestly.
Interesting.
Just because they don't seem to have any interest in it. They are jumping on the couch.
Wow.
I have never seen. They're like rewinding sequences, like when Skeezy comes in, like little kid is supposed to kiss the girl. Like they're like, rewind it. And then Schwarzenegger shocks the guy and he starts firing the machine gun. Like they're losing their goddamn
God bless.
minds.
I mean, that's
And
great.
do they stick with it the entire time?
Because
The
it's long.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I didn't realize is like after the end of it, I was like, oh, like it felt like it was going to end. And I was like, oh, it's long. They watch it the entire time. They never do that.
Yeah.
And they did ask some great questions. The question number one was when they were hearing Schwarzenegger talk, they're like, well, he doesn't really talk like that, right? And I go, nope, he does.
Wow.
And they were like,
then
Griffin probably
said,
does a great impression of him, right? That's really easy. That's a kind of clear handles anyone could do.
He's like, goes like this. He goes, is that British? I go, no, it's not British.
No. Kind of close
So
geographically, but not culturally. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that was the thing that I was really surprised at. I was like, oh, they got it. And then what I thought was really interesting was my 7-year-old, I love the way his brain works. He's the one who is more open to film. He really loved the jigsaw puzzle of he's in a movie, he's out of a movie. That's the character in the movie. Like, and he was really like kind of blown away by it. And this morning at breakfast, he was like, so like an actor can play a character, but a character, and I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. Like it was really interesting to watch it through their eyes. Cause I'm like listening to the riffs that remind me of Joe Satriani from like Lethal Weapon. And I'm like going, oh yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And they're just watching it they don't know who Arnold Schwarzenegger. They've never
buying
seen
into
Arnold
the magic
Schwarzenegger
of the
movie.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find it so interesting. In the dossier, I mean, one of the interviews with Zach Penn later after the fact, he was like, when we wrote this, we said it would be great to get Stallone or Schwarzenegger. You maybe need the guy. You need Jack Slater to be played by the real guy versus a parody of the guy, right? But then he was like, in our dream list, we're writing this movie for Landis or Zemeckis. We're like, you want a guy who's got a little bit more of like a comedic touch, a little bit more of like appeals to children.
If Zemeckis hadn't made Roger Rabbit,
That's the thing.
It's so similar.
This is a movie he could make.
Now,
the fact that he's made Roger Rabbit probably means that he's just like, well, I already did that.
why bother?
Yeah,
Can I throw out the two guys I thought of immediately while rewatching this?
obviously.
Dante makes Dante would have nailed this. Dante would make, I would argue, the single best version of this movie where he could have served all masters and all tones. It also might have been a movie that was smaller in size, did okay at release, and now has a huge legacy.
Matinee comes out in 93, and that's sort of his, I mean, it's a different era, but his kind of like, let me make a movie about the movies. Like,
But that's also his, like...
Everybody had to do that.
Everyone had to do that.
Everybody in that era is making a movie about going to the movies.
Absolutely.
Because it's that's generationally the last group of people who enjoyed it or took solace in it.
Now, here's the other guy I was thinking of, right? And I don't know if this movie works for your children today in 2024.
Can I guess who you're going to say?
Yeah.
Chris Columbus.
Correct.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I thought, right? Because people will ding the kid in this a lot, Austin O'Brien, right? And I was like, who else is born the same year as this kid? If they make this movie that is Schwarzenegger and Macaulay Culkin and Chris Columbus directs it, I think that film is actually as big of a hit as they want it to be.
It's
you
a bigger
disregard the Jurassic, problem. But it's like, that would have been the version of this movie that every audience could latch onto and go, I understand exactly what this is. I do think it would be less interesting to talk about today.
The only thing I'll say to that is like, Culkin is actually kind of in a similar, like, the fall has arrived.
That's why he maybe needed to do this.
Maybe, but I mean, like, it could be a compounding thing where people are like, no, we're sick of all of this, and you put it all in one movie. But this kid in this movie, who I think gets kind of a bad rap.
I think he's fine.
I don't think he's good or whatever, but I think people just decide like, well, he's an annoying kid. Like,
and I
think the movie is doing the kid a disservice.
I agree with that.
Because I think, and let me be clear. I'm sorry. I think the movie, but I think primarily McTiernan is doing the kid a disservice because the kid is unfortunate. The movie doesn't have a sense of humor. The movie doesn't have a light touch. McTiernan doesn't have a light touch at all.
That's the problem.
And the movie needs to have that levity. McTiernan needs to be able to have a lightness to this that is what is absolutely evident in a movie like Home Alone, where true violence is you're able to enjoy that a child is so adjacent to true violence.
Sometimes
and
literally carrying a pistol.
Griffin,
right.
I need to tell you something.
Please.
It's about an hour.
Okay, thank you. Our guest today from the How Did This Get Made podcast.
You know your mistake? You should have outroed with it.
The League. Well, I've done that bit before, so I didn't want to repeat that. I thought pinning it an hour would be funny.
Sounds good.
Jason Mantzoukas, Paul Scheer, thank you for coming back on the show.
Love to be here.
Thrilled to be here.
I keep on thinking about this idea, though, like the other problem with this movie, and what I really think is worthy of discussing, is it finished shooting 3 weeks before it came out.
This is a big McTiernan complaint.
But before we get to that, I just want to pin, because this is, you were just kind of activating this, but thing one McTiernan fully blames himself for on the commentary. And he says it basically 2 minutes in and it keeps repeating it is, I got the tone wrong. He's like, I'm watching this.
Sonnenfeld a guy who could do this? Like Adam's Family's like a year or two before?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
I'm trying to think of guys where it's like visual sense, self-awareness, can do comedy, but
you know who I would have taken? Rennie Harlan.
Well, the thing about Rennie Harlan is that guy delivers trash really well.
Yeah.
Yes. But can he elevate to this? I don't know.
Rennie Harlan could pull it off if you handed him a perfect screenplay.
I got it. I know who could do it. Donner.
Donner could
probably
do it.
I mean, are you thinking of Deep Blue Sea, Jason? Because Deep Blue Sea is the Harlan movie where you're like, this is funny, and it knows it's funny.
No, he did Fort Fairlane. He did Fort Fairlane, and he couldn't do it.
Perfect tone. Perfect tone.
Fort Fairlane, which shares a co-writer with this
Fairlane
film.
is a masterpiece.
David Arnott.
The reason I throw out the Columbus thing is it's like this movie is stuck between these two poles, which are like the Verhoeven version of it, right? And the Columbus version of it. And instead, you have a movie that's doing both at the same time, which is part of what I find fascinating about watching it right now. Everything that when I was 14 and I watched this for the first time on cable, I was like, yeah, this really doesn't fit together. I'm now kind of into its identity as a movie fighting with itself. But I think in the commentary, McTiernan just keeps on saying, like, I got this wrong.
Okay.
I got this wrong. And I'm sorry, there are two extensions of that.
We got to clear room for
dossier.
David. We got to clear room for David right now. He's panicking.
The two extensions of that is he keeps on saying, at the end of the day, this is a Cinderella story. That's the tone this needed to have. It's wish fulfillment. It's kid fantasy. It's more of a kid's movie than it is an action movie. And I let the action movie stuff and the sort of pressure of the studio, all this sort of stuff.
He's not a kids movie director.
Totally, which he acknowledges. And the other thing he keeps on saying is like, I was cowardly. I look at these comedic sequences and I lacked the courage to fully go for the joke. I go for 25% of the joke or 50% of the joke.
Like the La Brea Tar Pits fart joke.
Yes.
Where you're like, what is that? Like, you didn't go hard enough on the fart.
I was a coward. I can see this now watching this. I should have gone 2 steps further. Otherwise, not worth making.
I'm just pulling us back to the dossier because, again, the writing of this movie is crazy. So Shane Black, one thing he's basically like, we were given a tiny script with nothing happens, and we beefed it up to a summer movie, with setups and payoffs and reversals.
Two guys who basically write a spec script that's like, well, let's make the version of this that realistically could get made. Write it for
Shane
15
Black
or 20 minutes.
Told like Arnold Schwarzenegger's in this film.
And Schwarzenegger sells his movies by saying, this one's even bigger. We had the biggest boat. We had the biggest explosion.
Shane Black is proud of a gag that is sadly not in a movie where Slater grabbed a scratch from the film and killed a villain with it. Sounds fun.
Oh,
so I think
great.
Black's script is more, it's with this guy, David Arnott, who basically didn't write again after this movie. Is that a buddy of Shane's?
Buddies.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do we know, was there a director attached during the Shane Black version? Was McTiernan already in at that point?
No,
not
right
yet.
now we're still in script stage, and this is those early 90 superstar writer phase of like, like we're going to bring in the biggest names.
Did they throw in a William Goldman at a certain point?
They do.
He
Goldman
does
took
a
a
pass.
pass.
Oh, wow.
Goldman does a pass.
Yeah, they bring this script to Schwarzenegger, the pen draft. He's like, love the concept, don't like the execution. Throw money at it until there's a script I like, and then we'll hire a director.
The WGA rules that Penn and Left get no credit,
which is
they
absurd.
fight,
Yeah,
and are given the story by credit, and they feel bad, and Zach Penn is given a role of a police officer in the film, kind of as a tip your hat. And then Zach Penn said, when he was on set, another actor came up to him and was like, "By the way McTiernan's blocking this, you're not going to be in the movie. Like he's blocking you out of the movie," which is funny.
When they get the black draft, they're like, this doesn't have the heart it needs. It doesn't have the emotional story. Arnold's now really thinking about the family movie aspect of it. And is like, we need someone who can really just bring the story into this. Black came in with the ideas and the action and blowing it up to size. And so then it's similarly like, who's the most expensive writer in Hollywood? Like both times he says, get me the best. Who's the best action guy? Shane Black, pay him $1 million. William Goldman, pay him $1 million.
You know the other one that's a crazy one who writes on this movie? Carrie Fisher.
Yes.
Carrie Fisher.
Well, she's a notoriously
she was a punch-up queen at the
doctor.
time. Yeah.
Script doctor of this era. So yes.
And every movie of this size, basically, the final round would be pay Carrie Fisher $500,000, $1 million to put, quote unquote, the woman's touch on the picture.
Right.
And I will say, I love that too. And there was just a recent article about Scott Frank, who is the contemporary script doctor of our era, talking about a lot of the movies that he's worked on. Great article in support of his new show, Monsieur Spade, which is fantastic.
I can't wait to watch
it is
that
good.
show.
Oh, okay, good. I've heard a lot of negative stuff about it.
Scott Frank's
I
great.
dug it. I've only just started it, but I'm enjoying it very much.
People forget
so far.
how much chess Anya Taylor-Joy played. And we all loved chess.
Yeah.
Anyway, look. Schwarzenegger signs on $15 million salary.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm the executive producer. I'm going to put this on my shoulders. I want to be responsible for every level
I've been involved
of the decision
before,
making.
but now there's no part of this film, from marketing, from selling, from packaging, from production, that I'm not going to have approval over.
Get me John McTiernan.
Yeah.
That is his first demand. I want the guy who made 3 of the biggest action movies of the last 10 years.
He's going to the supermarket and buying the most expensive brand of each item.
But don't you think that that also makes a studio go, okay, like we're relaxed now? Because if you throw enough money at it, it's going to be like, you know, how many times do we have to learn this lesson? It's going to be good, but it's not going to be good. You know, it's going to be a mess.
And they're also like adding up the box office totals of all the people who have worked on this movie now. But part of it, I mean, this is what they say is like Arnold had to go out there. The athlete part of him, the businessman part of him, sells his movies by being like, we spent so much fucking money on this thing. That's part of the sales tactic that has worked for him. That at the time it was like Total Recall's budget's insane. And then Terminator 2 is the first movie to cost $100 million. He loves like selling the excess of the production, of the collaborators, of the budget.
It's not really until Twins that he figures out I will forego a giant salary in order to have
the
back end.
Is where the
and then, now I've made tens of millions of dollars, you know, many tens of millions of dollars.
His comedies he kept thrifty, and his action movies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
So Schwarzenegger says he's having a drink with McTiernan early in shooting, and McTiernan says, what we're really making here is E.T. And Schwarzenegger says, I start to have a sinking feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe this PG-13 thing is a mistake. People might not buy this. Like, yes, Harrison Ford can pull it off in Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever.
That's not my brand.
I'm not going to deliver enough action. Right. I'm not going to live up to like the Schwarzenegger branding here. Yeah. Zach Penn says, and he's not wrong. He's just like, when they hired McTiernan, I was just baffled. Like, I was like, Zemeckis, like you said, John Landis is a name he says. Like, someone who pulled genres apart. John McTiernan does not do that and has no track record of doing that before or since, really.
No, but here's the other part of it. McTiernan, all the interviews I read, the commentaries I watch, whatever, when you're like on his best films, you know, on Die Hard and Predator, he throws a lot of shade at the movies that came after those two that quote unquote took the wrong lessons from him. I think at the moment he's making this movie, he almost has like a shame about what he feels like he birthed.
Yeah.
Where it's not that he wants to parody himself. He wants to parody the people who got him wrong by like underlining the vapidness of people stealing his tricks.
I think that's true. And I think there's another thing, which is I don't think he's parodying it enough.
No.
Like, I don't think he's taking the piss, because I almost think he's homaging himself at times.
Well, I don't think
rather than parodying or spoofing.
You can't parody yourself. It's like saying like the best person to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Right. Like, you know, and it's like you can't like you need somebody else. You know, you need Griffin to do the impression.
But wait a second. Actually, though, but then at the same time, can I actually argue that Arnold Schwarzenegger is the best person to parody himself?
He's the one example, maybe.
Yeah, like
right. Well, I think that but I guess like yes, I agree with the Schwarzenegger of it all. I think Schwarzenegger could be in this movie, and this movie could work. I don't think that McTiernan could parody himself. That's what I was saying.
I think that's part of it, and I think there's also a proximity problem. I don't think you can do Last Action Hero where it is Schwarzenegger is the hero with a teenage sidekick, just whatever short number of years after T2. 2 years after T2.
That's a fair point.
It's too much the actual thing.
I think so.
He could do this if he did this 7 years later, you know.
It's I think the reason why Galaxy Quest works, which comes out in 1999, a handful of years later, and is doing very much a similar thing.
Yeah.
You would argue on some level, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not William Shatner in that role. It's Tim Allen, right? And Tim Allen there are elements of Tim Allen.
Yeah, but he's not doing a Shatner impression. Right.
Exactly.
He's doing a character.
And I think that that's important. And I think that this is a movie where McTiernan goes, well, who's going to play Benedict? Well, Alan Rickman. But Benedict is Alan Rickman in Die Hard, and purposely so. But he doesn't even he's like, well, we'll just get Alan Rickman.
Well, it's Charles Dance.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but that's what I'm saying.
His
like you're
initial
saying,
thinking.
Sure.
Their initial thinking,
yes.
and then Charles Dance finds out in the middle of the movie that he wasn't the first choice. The first choice was Alan Rickman, but Alan Rickman was too expensive, so he starts wearing a shirt around set that says, "I'm cheaper than Alan Rickman." But like, you know, it's like, but that to me, that move from McTiernan is exactly why he's not good to make this movie, because or doesn't get the nuance of it. Because, well, we'll just get the actor.
Well, and that's a perfect role, I think, to pull out to use as the test case of how joyless and how little fun this movie is having for me. Because this character specifically, the Mr. Benedict part, the Gary Busey, Mr. Joshua in Lethal Weapon, the Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber part, should be a fucking blast. He should be eating it all up. And I feel like he's less
over the top than some of the people you're mentioning.
But yes.
Dance is a pretty nuanced actor.
I love him, but I want it to be that role should like both Hans Gruber and Mr. Joshua are enormous characters in their respective versions of these movies. And he is quite sedate and quiet.
I would argue they didn't push him in the writing enough.
Maybe.
Right? Because it's like he doesn't do that much. He doesn't have that much. Like he doesn't, there's not meat there to even, I don't know how you chew that scenery.
Dance's whole thing is simmering villainy.
Yeah.
Like that's just what he gives you, or simmering heroism like in like Alien 3. But like,
I will tell you, my kids went bananas in the scene where he goes, "I just shot a man. I just shot a man. Really come and get me." Like that's a funny scene that he.
I did it on purpose.
A dark scene, like a scene that McTiernan does with almost like a Verhoeven kind of edge. Like that's one where I feel like he's comedically locked into something specific. I also think what's interesting about Dance and Benedict in this movie is, and it gets into like this being the less satisfying version of this as like popcorn entertainment, but the more interesting version of it as an object with some distance. He's in a certain way kind of the emotional center of the movie. And his character is the guy who's having like the greatest existential crisis in a way over like, I am a character in a movie, I don't exist. And not only that, I'm a henchman. I'm not even the main villain.
Yeah.
And that whole first section of him coming to LA and being like simultaneously thrilled and terrified by the fact that like this place is actually worse.
No, it's New York. It's not LA.
I'm sorry.
It's New York.
It's New York City, my friend. Big Apple, they call it.
But I agree. I love that he, like how disposable Anthony Quinn is as the main mob guy.
Yeah.
Vivaldi. His name is Tony Vivaldi.
Talk about another hyper expensive joke.
Well, yes. Okay. All right. Look again. let me
back to reality.
Back to the document.
Back to the profligate spending, basically. So as you mentioned, all right. Let's rewrite the script again. Pay Bill Goldman $1 million
for 4 weeks.
For 4 weeks of work. They don't like that script. John McTiernan supposedly rewrote the script himself.
Not smart.
Larry Ferguson, who is a famous script doctor at the time. Carrie Fisher, who's a screen doctor. A legendary script doctor, of course. Charles Dance says he wrote a lot of his own dialogue. Shane Black said at one point they came back to him and were like, "Hey, can you rewrite? We're missing X, Y, and Z." And Shane Black was like, "No, you fired me. Fuck you.
Wow.
Like, I'm not doing that." So another thing that has happened is Sony, who make, as you may know,
who make it to movies.
Well, but at this point they make like hi-fis
sure.
and televisions.
Yes.
Have bought a movie studio called Columbia Pictures for $3.4 billion.
They do that in 89?
89.
Yeah.
They have hired John Peters, the most chill person in the universe, to run it.
Yeah.
John Peters then, flames out like a giant meteor. Mark Price comes on board. But so basically, this is a time where Mark Price is kind of sweating. He's new in the job. And he decides, like, this is the movie. Like, if this fails, I'm done.
It's a bit of a Zaslav moment where all the chips get pushed in on the flash. And it's like, I'm going to will a movie into being the biggest movie. The other thing here is, like, now this happens all the time. But the Sony acquisition of Columbia is such a big deal.
Not Mark Price, Mark Canton. Mark Price.
Canton,
Yeah.
Is such a big deal at the time. It pretty quickly comes out that it was, like, wildly overvalued, that Sony overspent, and that they immediately are like, this is a bad business. The movie business doesn't make sense.
Why did we do this?
Why did we get into this? And unlike the sort of musical chairs that happens with Warner Brothers every 18 months or whatever, Sony just doubled down and stuck with it but it's a company that has this axe swinging over its head for all of the 90s of just regret. And the regret is combated with just go huge. Try to prove them wrong.
Well, I mean, at this time, don't they make Wild Wild West?
Wild Wild West is Warner Brothers, and that's 99.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
You're just thinking of the fact that John Peters is involved with that movie, and
when
crowbarred and
Peters
inspired
leaves
into it.
Sony, which is part of this story, Wild Wild West becomes his big passion project.
Got it.
Along
That's
with
what I'm
Superman.
thinking of.
Yeah,
Got it.
At a certain point, Jurassic Park gets put on the schedule for a week before this film. It's get put on for June 11th. This film's supposed to come out June 18th. Schwarzenegger says we can't move the movie because it will look like it's in trouble.
And talking about timeline, from the moment McTiernan is hired, it is 9 months until the set in stone release date. From the moment they start filming, it is 7 months.
Correct.
This film wraps principal photography 1 month before it is released. The whole time, there are a couple things. They're like, first of all, if we move back, it shows that we're scared. It will create bad press that we can't combat. A problem they end up not circumventing at all, right?
At one point, Zach Penn called Canton at Columbia and said, I am credited on Last Action
It's
Hero.
my idea.
I am more excited to see Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And I literally invented the other movie. Like, don't you think you should move it? But they're just like, no. Like,
and Jurassic has been in the works for longer. Like they're jumping in and going like, we're gonna get there and we're gonna beat them.
A little similar to them not moving Mission Impossible off of
Correct.
Barbenheimer.
Yes.
Barbenheimer is another behemoth on the horizon that they are like, oh, wait a minute, we can't move this
We
date.
can do this.
And then I think that Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 suffers as a result.
But, I'm thinking about this too, about Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is doing what this movie wants to do too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big, a kind of adult action movie,
but it's for
with
everybody.
kids.
Yes.
But and it's like, but it gives you both feelings. It's like, as a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I was there, and as an adult, you're like, I'm enjoying this movie as a full on, it's
all in
doing
wonder
that.
and it's thrills and chills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not holding back. It is to me like it's Jaws for everyone, and I do think it's interesting that this is like in the world. So now you're really even competing against tonally what else is coming out. Like these are the movies that are the same. Imagine if you went into a movie. Imagine if you like got to be with dinosaurs. You're going into these fully fictional worlds.
And there's a quote in the dossier, I think, from someone who worked at Sony when they were talking about the idea of pushing it back. And they said, every week you push it back is going to take 10 million off the final gross. Because they were thinking this needs to come out in June and play the entire summer. If we push it back, we have less summer, less kids in schools. It has to come out early.
It's not now. I think the calculation people make is like, look, we get 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So who cares?
Yeah.
Right. Like after 2 weeks, which is actually the wrong calculation even now, but especially then idiotic.
Yes.
The film held a preview screening that is one of the most notorious bad test screenings of all time. They showed the film, Schwarzenegger says, in the roughest form I've ever seen a movie screened. It was basically
like me doing ADR, like the voices.
Yes. There was a temporary dub.
The stars had not done their own ADR yet.
You couldn't hear the dialogue. The score was a temp score, obviously. Yeah. The special effects were unfinished. The screening went so badly that Mark Canton, the head of Sony, had the test scores destroyed, which is hilarious. He
truly burned them.
Right. And Schwarzenegger claims that like there were a few people who did enjoy it, but the buzz of just this test screening is so horrible.
Yes.
That, as Jason says, once the movie's arriving, and they went off and they did some reshoots basically up to like a week, before the movie comes out. But the movie's just arriving with the worst buzz. Now, who's one person who contributed to this bad buzz?
Jeffrey Wells, the Voldemort of the film blogging world.
I don't know if you guys know Jeff Wells, who still exists.
Yes.
And will send us angry emails when we talk about him on the podcast.
But
really?
Yep.
Back in the day, worked at EW or he was a freelancer, but he wrote an article for the LA Times, right? He maybe works for EW later.
Yeah.
Alleging that a secret screening beyond this terrible screening had been held that was a complete disaster. Columbia fights back, says you have to take this article down. Wells tries to track down the sources, couldn't find any, and decides that he may have actually made it up, and they do have to retract the article.
My brother, who is hard to pin down on the phone, called me like maybe Christmas Eve, and I was like, why is he calling? And he went, hey, I just watched Munich for the first time. I realized I'd never seen Munich. I should maybe watch Munich. And I went, okay. And he went, and then I listened to your episode, and like half the episode is you guys sharing Jeff Wells stories. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, can you just tell me some of the Jeff Wells stories again? Yeah. And my brother and I had this phone conversation.
I mean, they're good. The hat.
That was me, just the emotionally vivid cowboy hat, the pocket cake. I hit all the big ones.
Look,
I love that.
Here's some other things in this. We just have to mention this.
Yeah.
The World Trade Center was bombed February 26, 1993.
Yes.
3 days later, Columbia floated a 5-story inflatable balloon in Times Square that displayed Schwarzenegger holding a gun and 3 sticks of dynamite.
Basically the one that's in the movie.
In their defense, they said, it's too bad, but we had planned to be here for months.
Too bad.
Good job, guys.
Too
The
bad,
other
so
infamous
sad.
marketing thing for this movie, a part of like Schwarzenegger, is it's got to be bigger. We got to break records. We got to do something no one's ever done before. They announced this is going to be the first movie to be marketed in space.
In space. They pay NASA
yes.
$500,000 to put an ad onto a rocket.
And if you look at the image of it, it's truly like a plaque. It's a plaque that just says Last Action Hero coming summer 1993. That's just sort of like drilled, riveted onto the side of the rocket.
Right.
But then the launch got delayed.
Yes.
The rocket wasn't going to go up into space until 2 months after the movie came out, at which point it was conclusively a bomb. And NASA also realized that maybe they had a contract that prevented anyone else from marketing on a rocket. So there was like a huge press conference with Arnold pointing at the rocket and saying, look, it's drilled in here, the name Last Action Hero. And then it never even happened.
The film comes out and it does badly. And we've been sort of getting into why, but I do think we should discuss the film itself now.
So here's the thing that McTiernan says, like minute one of the commentary, that he blames himself for. He says, the turnaround of this movie was really tough. We never should have agreed to it, all this sort of stuff, right? The movie basically comes out a month after it's filmed, after it wraps. The only way we were able to make that release is that I basically shoot for the edit. I don't shoot coverage. I structure my shots and my sequencing and my scenes in a way where you can basically just take the film out of the camera, cut it end to end, and it works. So, like, that was helpful in the fact that we were able to turn the movie around that fast. It also creates a problem, and I want to make it very clear, this is me blaming myself and not the editors, is what he keeps saying, that because I shoot that way, there is really no room to modify the film.
Yeah, they couldn't cut around it.
Okay.
Right.
Now, let me tell you, I worked on a movie with Larry Charles.
Legendary Seinfeld
The
writer,
Dixon
directed,
musical,
Borat.
I did as well on The Dictator.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Sure.
Lovely guy. And
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I know that he had felt that in the past, people had taken the edit away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the movie that I shot with him, he was like, I am only shooting what I would put in the movie.
Right.
And,
no coverage.
and it is,
right.
Yeah. And it becomes it's the most aggressive thing that you can do because you have to be so sure that you are going to get, like, you don't need anything else. And this is a movie that seemingly has none of that foresight because the train is running and people, the minute it goes. And that's where I feel like, as much as I don't even believe in McTiernan as this guy, like, he continually shoots himself in the foot multiple times.
Yes.
And that is really the biggest problem, is like these things that he puts in front of himself. He's not a director who should have these options.
No, it's fascinating because it's like, this is from the beginning, as it's the establishment of the Jack Slater 3, the cops outside the roof, right? And you're just like, this is a fine enough sequence. And he's like, I already fucked this up. I haven't seen this movie in 20 years. I'm immediately recognizing what I fucked up. And he's like, look, I like to hit multiple story beats in one shot. I prefer to not edit unless you need to move the camera from one place to another, to connect two ideas, to hook them together in your mind. They hand me this script and I shot every single thing as it was written. In my previous movies, you're fighting against schedule, you're fighting against budget. And in that pressure, I go, what's the more elegant way of making this information more concise, getting this story beat across in a simpler way, limiting the amount of shots, and I get to a point where everything becomes the cleanest version of itself. This was me just doing everything. They provided everything for me, and I took all of it, and then you get to a point where there's no way to cut the sequence down because I didn't spend the time in development, in production, to make it more clever then. We were stuck with everything I shot the way that I shot it.
And I also don't think, and I don't know, maybe he speaks to it, I don't think he feels comfortable in the more comedic and thus satirical points and elements.
Openly.
And so
I was
it
scared
ends up
I didn't go far enough.
Right.
It ends up in this middle ground where it's neither nor. It's not a scathing, funny satire. It doesn't, imagine if this is it's never, I don't know, it wasn't intended this way, but if this is a Zucker Brothers level, movie of
Hot
jokes,
shots.
then, incredible,
Yeah.
But even less that, even just leaning into what is comedically strong about some of these setups, he seems more interested in doing the action movie versions of those scenes.
I think he's just scared. I don't even think he's more interested in the action. I think he doesn't trust himself. He's scared to really go for it.
Well, because, and this goes back to the idea that you can't parody yourself because you don't have enough perspective on it. Like, he could probably give Schwarzenegger notes on how to do a performance that was maybe a little bit more heightened or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what he'd have to be doing to make that scene good is know how he would shoot it and then shoot the heightened version of it. It's almost like, as a director, he'd have to do it twice.
Mm-hmm.
We're also seemingly not interested in interrogating the story of Daniel, one of grief and loss and trauma and not being, and using the movies to get through these life's hurdles, using the movies and the lessons learned inside of them, not just escapism, but what are the lessons learned from inside of these movies that make him able to move through his grief and get to a better, more emotionally revealing or revelatory place. And the movie's not interested in that either.
By the way, I thought they missed a giant, beautiful ending of this movie. I don't know if you guys thought this as well. So
Mercedes Rule saying, "Never tell me."
Never tell. I'll be so high on Demerol. It's revealed that his son, I mean, this is a crazy fucking thing. His son is killed by the Ripper. Jack Slater's son is killed by the Ripper.
The Jack Slater character's son.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Which we don't see because Robert Prosky falls asleep. So Danny doesn't see the end of the movie until that's revealed to us like an hour in.
In like a flashback of Schwarzenegger or of Jack Slater's. But so anyway, and then he hears about it from the daughter. All I thought was, what a beautiful ending this movie could have is if when they're bringing him into the theater at the end, when he's bleeding out, he's dying, they're going to get him back in the movie. We don't have Jack Slater 4. We only have Jack Slater 3, and he could go back in the movie and save his son.
Yeah.
Like, that to me felt like, but no.
Or
like
Daniel.
it was right there.
Daniel could help. Daniel could help save the son. There's also Daniel could help, help his own healing.
Yes.
If he participated in the healing the relationship between Slater and his son. There's something inside of that, that is lost, but also Slater and Daniel never bond over their shared loss. The Arnold character is almost too, even when they enter into the real world, too much a part of the narrative, the fictional world. He's not interested in investigating the emotional reality of this character.
It is also just fascinating that Danny has a dead father, right? Jack Slater has a dead son. And this movie primarily positions them as best friends.
Yeah.
For how much both of these characters are dealing with huge loss and the absence of these figures in their lives, they don't really play it as a father-son dynamic, I would argue.
I like that.
It's
everything you guys are describing is a heartwarming film, but I kind of like that this isn't like that.
I agree with you.
It's like a weird freak movie.
Yes.
Right.
But so to your point, And Daniel even says it in the movie. He says, we're the perfect buddy cop.
Yeah,
we're a buddy cop movie or a whatever. It's written as a two-hander like Lethal Weapon or something like that. But it's not executing that successfully for me.
No, he's a sidekick. The kid is a sidekick. Because this kid doesn't really do much in the movie universe. He's just there to be like, this is a trope and like, blah, blah, blah. And then he does some Crane stuff.
Once again, I think this kid's gotten too much shit for too long. I think he's totally fine in this movie.
I like him. I think he's fine. Like I've watched a lot of these movies with my kid. This kid is more capable than most. I don't think he's incredibly additive, but I don't think he's detracting from anything.
No, I also do think if the movie is going to sell what Jason, you're saying it's trying to put forward is like at a certain point, they really are achieving full Riggs and Murda together, right? You want this kid to be a little more streetwise, have a little more edge.
Yes.
Right.
The kid for me.
Yeah.
The kid is spends too much of the movie being like, whoa, we're in the scene where this happens. Or, whoa, you know what's about to happen is this. You know what it's the kid is reacting too much to being in a movie rather than executing from the position of, it's like lucid dreaming.
Yes.
Once you realize you're dreaming, you can control the dream. And the kid never starts to control the elements of the movie. He's always reactive. In a way that I was like, oh, wait, no, be more proactive here because you have now the power. You're the only person here who knows they're in a movie.
He has the default mode of gee whiz in a movie that does set up such a compelling, like, this kid's life sucks. He is trapped in pre-Giuliani New York. Like the scariest
he's
place
like a
in the history of cinema.
Kid who lives on Times Square, it seems.
Right, and I do think the introduction is really evocative of like, start with Jack Slater 3, right? Then the movie breaks down. He goes and knocks on Prosky's door. Prosky's his like one friend, basically. And then he goes home and it's like every fucking day you do this. You're watching this, you think he's watching a movie at night. No, he's skipping school. It's the middle of the day. He leaves the doors of this great old movie palace that's now like decrepit and caked in graffiti. And he's on like the toughest streets of Times Square. He's getting in trouble. He goes home. His mom chews him out. And then a robber comes in, tries to mug him. This kid like lives in like a horrible sort of hellscape.
The robber scene is a hat on a hat, in my opinion. I was almost like, are we already in the movie? Like I was actually confused by
yes.
But his
Mercedes rule's good though.
His gee whiz nature when he's watching the movie and so invested in it becomes really sad the deeper you go into his life, and you're like, this kid is just trying to ignore everything in his reality.
Well, and I mean, the other thing that I would argue is, and look, I think that the movie does a lot of things. There's a lot of like almost good ideas here as far as like structure and plot, but like, I'm not begging for it, but does the character have an arc at all? The kid, like, what's his arc? I don't even know what his arc.
No, his arc isn't this cool? I'm in a movie.
But I mean, like his story is my dad is dead. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm alone. My mom is, like, struggling to keep us afloat. Like, I'm a latchkey kid in, like, one of the most dangerous environments.
Surrounded by crime.
But he loves them. And I get it. He loves the movies. I love this as a setup. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that he gets to go inside the movie. But none of what is Danny's personal issues are resolved by the events of him being in Jack Slater 4.
No, he just gets really invested in trying to resolve Jack Slater's problems.
Yes.
It feels like a further deflection of like, I don't want to deal with my own shit.
So is he trying to save his father? Is he trying to like, is this a futile effort to save the father that he couldn't save when his dad died?
I mean, these are all fair points. I'm sort of like Zach Cherry on the yesterday episode where I'm like, I don't really...
You don't know. You're not interested. You're in it. You're willing to skate along.
No, I hear that note and I'm like, that's fine. But at the end of the movie is basically, yes, Jack Slater gains some sort of self-awareness, returns to his world where he will now function slightly more
self-aware
normally.
Movie star. That's not fun either. Like that's like super stupid.
Right, but like that's what I like. I like that the ending is just like anyway, like yeah, the laws of reality have been thrown off their axis. But
basically the character who has growth and an arc is the character who is a fictional character in the movie.
Is Benedict.
Yeah.
Like and Slater.
The real people don't benefit from the events of the movie at all.
No, Mercedes Rule says, don't tell me what happened.
Yes.
I just think I agree with David where like it's so easy to look at this movie, and I think this is how I watched it when I was 14 or 15, when I was sort of like Danny age and like looking for the plot holes and like this doesn't tie together.
Sure.
Why don't they pay this off in this kind of way? And now I watch it and I'm like, there's something kind of cynically fascinating about this movie being like, this kid lives in hell. He gets sucked into its own kind of hellish world, right? This absurd, nihilistic, over-the-top sort of violence glorifying fantasia that represents like the last stages of like excess 90s filmmaking before it's about to explode. Like this type of movie is at a point in 1993 very similar to like what we just watched happen with the superhero movie in 2023.
What's a modern version of this movie that I like a lot?
Tell me.
Ready Player One?
Well, I disagree with you strongly.
Yeah.
But that similar thing of
wait,
like
do you really like it a lot, David?
loves
That
it
film
now.
is fantastic, and I think it is about the same kind of thing of this kid being like, I live inside all my favorite pop culture. Isn't this great? And Steven Spielberg's like, this is hell. This is hell.
Yeah.
And I created hell. And I think McTiernan, there's a world where McTiernan is like, could do that of this sort of like, yeah, I kind of am part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
But this movie is sort of joking about that, but doesn't quite lean into it enough.
He's unknowingly doing, and I also think what's interesting about this movie is it's like here are two hells, right? This kid lives in hell and he wants to escape to the movies, and that's a different type of hell. And the end of the movie is both of them going back to their places and nothing is solved.
But like Pleasantville is like that, which is the same sort of vibe of like these people seem to have kind of like a shitty life.
Mm-hmm.
Jane Kaczmarek being the Mercedes rule of Pleasantville, and then when they exit Pleasantville, just Toby, he's like, what lesson has he learned? It's like, Pleasantville isn't so great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess I'll just continue to live this shitty life, but with that perspective.
My mom's crying in the kitchen.
And I'm like, I like that.
Yeah.
I think, David, to your point, like, I like this movie. I like it a lot. I think it's really smart. I think it's really funny. I think there's a lot of ways it could have been great. I think there's a lot of things that don't make sense that I don't mind in the moment. I think when you really stop, like, I'm a big believer of like, if it pulls off the magic trick while you're watching it, you have to accept that it worked on some level, right? Because it's sort of like, yes, it's easy to sit back and go, wait, why didn't they use a phone? Why did they go over here? What, but if like I enjoyed, like I watched that movie, didn't know what I was going to get. And I will tell you, the only thing that was weird for me was watching this movie and saying to my kids, like when they're watching the bad guy, Benedict, in the real world of New York, and they're like, well, wait, what's happening? I'm like, oh, he realizes that bad guys that in the real world, people get killed and no one comes. And like, it's a really dark, like that thing is dark. And that's what we're talking about. The tonal choices in this movie are all over the board. Cause that's a dark, heady concept to throw in there to be like, oh yeah. In our world, people get killed all the time and no one gives a shit.
It's also like, it's very similar to when Barbie and Ken go to the real world, and Ken realizes that the real world is run by men.
I thought about Barbie a lot while watching this movie again.
And I was like, oh, that's what this is. But the movie is not interested in having any of the characters interrogate this reality the way that Ken, like the events, then Ken going back and sharing that information. That like
Barbie is a better constructed film than this.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have been cool for them to go back into the movie and start monkeying with the movie's story?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, this is like a weird 12-act movie. As we said, the movie's kind of hung around Danny as a character, but doesn't really give him an arc. It's sort of the fascinating thing that Barbie does is that it opens in the fake world. Yeah. Takes a long time to get to the real world.
Returns to the fake world.
And America Ferrera is the Danny character, but she's very much a supporting character. She's not the viewpoint character of the movie.
She kind of is.
She's introduced late, though.
No, I know.
She has true nostalgia for it.
Yeah.
Like almost it's as if, what if Danny was older?
Right. If Danny was now.
And had outgrown these kind of movies. He loved Jack Slater when he was a teenager, but now he's a little older and he's a little out of that. What's that?
Like from the
imagination of John Krasinski.
I'm sorry. Yes. And And so then he's got to like go back, like the daughter in America Ferrera's daughter. That's an interesting version of the story to tell, but he's too excited to be in the movie, shooting guns and being the sidekick to his favorite guy, that like it doesn't seem to address or engage with any of the stuff that is maybe why he's having this adventure, why he's on this, what is driving this this emotional odyssey.
Paul, I know your book's about to come out, and this is stuff that I assume is litigated in your book to some degree. But watching this movie and knowing we were going to talk to you about it, kept thinking of your stories of recording movies off the TV onto cassette tapes and obsessively re-listening to them, right?
Right.
And it's like when you tell those sorts of stories about your childhood and about your relationship to pop culture, it's always from this adult vantage point of, I now look back and recognize how sad this was, or how much this was me trying to hide from something. And there's fascinating about Danny being a kid who, despite the fact that he's stuck in terrible circumstances, does not actually seem like depressed or scared, right? He's kind of just accepted his lot in life and then just goes like, and I like watching movies a lot. There's an inability for this character to analyze his position at all, what his life actually is, or why he's running away to something else.
And I would argue because this movie was made by a lot of men that would probably be terrible fathers.
Yeah.
Like that have never thought about like what a child is like. Yeah, he's a kid. A kid.
We don't see him in school. We don't see him with his friends. We don't see him in school.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, that's but we see him watching a movie in school.
Imagining a cooler movie.
Yes, exactly. So what I mean to say is like we don't get a sense of like his actual life beyond watching
his
movies.
His only friend is Robert Prosky. He seems to go to the theater 7 times a day.
If my friend was Robert Prosky, I would not need another friend.
Again, if you look through the list of actors in this, everybody is, Art Carney, Robert Prosky, it is a murderer's row, Anthony Quinn of incredible actors.
The gag of Art Carney being his second cousin and the fact that they keep bringing it up is very funny.
Art Carney, F. Murray Abraham, Anthony Quinn.
They, of course, say killed Mozart in the film. Anthony Quinn, Zorba the Greek himself.
And there's a 4th Oscar winner in this, I'm forgetting.
John Plowright?
Plowright's a nominee. Stone's a nominee.
Quinn, of course, has an Oscar.
McKellen's a nominee.
McKellen's a nominee. Rude.
McKellen's great in this movie.
McKellen is such a great reveal, too. Frank McRae, incredible.
He's so funny.
Lieutenant. Tom Noonan, incredible. These are just all some of the great.
Yes.
Tina Turner,
amazing. Fantastic.
Chevy Chase, thrilled that he got cut out of this. It was great to see him just, whatever he did not work, and they gave more screen time to Jim Belushi, which was hilarious to me.
Yes.
My wife was like, why would McKellen do this? And I was like, he was not famous. Obviously he's a very famous British theater actor at the time, but McKellen would give you 5 minutes. This is the same year as I'll Do Anything, or a year after?
Yeah.
Or a year before, even,
Mercedes Ruehl. Mercedes Ruehl
has an Academy Award.
Carney.
This is her follow-up to her Oscar win.
Yes. These are people coming in with big cash and Oscar paydays, and you guys debating, is this favors or is this money? I think the excess of this movie is that it's both. It's that they're calling in favors and then paying those favors a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, because I think it's very clear this is not a for the love of the game movie. This is, we're blowing it out. Yes. We're doing it all.
I think, looking at what I've read here, that Schwarzenegger bullied some people to be in this movie. And those people are Robert Patrick, to reprise his character of the T-1000. I think that is Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think anyone who's in that premiere is Schwarzenegger going, you are doing this because I need you to do it. And even Sharon Stone, to a certain extent, she doesn't need to be there. She's not getting a payday. These are people who are not getting a payday. These are people who are simply being shoved in to be cameos.
The Stallone gag is the best version of this kind of cameo, where you don't even need him to participate.
Yes. Yeah.
You just need him to sign off on it. Some of the cameos in the red carpet are perfectly fine, and some of them, like Robert Patrick, you're kind of we already got it. But it's the best. part of the red carpet sequence is Schwarzenegger and Shriver as themselves. Like that is
and
actually
Shriver
funny.
just
Shriver being like, do not fucking plug Planet Hollywood. It is so tacky. And Schwarzenegger being like, it's a great opportunity. Like, come on, the cameras are here.
Can I tell you my favorite cameo in the whole movie? And the one that really like got me, Humphrey Bogart. That was such a funny joke.
Oscar winner.
Another Oscar winner, and that was, I was like, wow, that they pulled that off.
Yeah,
like, and that's like kind of the fun thing about this movie. Like, there are these jokes that are deep. The cat is funny like that. There are these like moments where like,
the animated cat,
yeah, They do these things where they go in and then like it's...
And then it keeps coming back. The cat returns. It's DeVito is the cat.
DeVito as Whiskers.
And that the cat keeps coming back at like the very end when he's been shot and he's like, they got Jack! You know, I'm like, great.
But just another example of the joke of a cartoon cat. If this were a real movie, who would voice it? Danny DeVito. We're paying DeVito.
That's actually good DeVito. But there are jokes like the cat, Hamlet, Ian McKellen as the Death from the Seventh Seal emerging. Now, of course, Bogus Journey had also done that joke, but like, you know, where you're like, this is for a highbrow audience, almost like this is dinky humor.
Yes.
And then there are other jokes like a man named Tony the Fart,
correct,
falls into the La Brea tar pits and dies as an exploding fart bubble.
Yes.
Now here's the thing. You base your third act on Ingmar Bergman, an Ingmar Bergman villain. And an $80 million blockbuster, that's fucking nuts. Like that, like,
I'm
while
gonna give
funny,
you a pass. Yeah.
That's
I
like, well,
that.
what are we doing here? I mean, I like it too, but it's like
I can just only imagine the flat, mirthless atmosphere at, say, the premiere of this film, where people are like, oh, okay. Oh, the Seventh Seal. Right. Yeah. Like just like the complete nonplusedness.
Also, I mean, Paul, you said third act. McKellen as Death from the Seventh Seal is basically introduced in the 11th out of 12 acts of this movie.
I mean, it's a film with 5 acts in that there is a 3-act film inside the film.
There's a 3-act Jack Slater.
He gets sucked into a 3-act film.
Right.
And before that, we basically see this, prologue act of him alone. And then the final act is very long. Like you think like, oh, they'll be out and about for 10 minutes. And it's like half an hour.
And even when they get to the standoff with the Ripper, you're like, well, this is the denouement of the movie. And you're like, no, Death has not entered yet.
And also Dance is still alive.
Correct.
Yeah, no, there's all kinds of...
Well, because Dance is the bad guy. Dance is the
real bad guy.
Biggest bad,
he is.
Who can travel back and forth through reality and fiction.
Well, he has the magic ticket, Jason. I mean, obviously.
Thank God.
That's established.
Thank God there's a
the rules of the magic ticket are really clear and obvious. It totally makes sense how it works.
He should have gotten the T-1000 from Stallone's Terminator 2. I mean, that's what we should have. We should have had a little bit of you could do some fun stuff with that. I mean, we pull out the Ripper, but like you also can't do a thing where you talk about Hannibal Lecter, Dracula, Freddy Krueger, all these people, and then you go like, "What? We're not going to show any of those."
It is astounding for how big this movie was and how much they said, let's do everything, that they don't do that at the end. And part of it's we're watching this from the vantage point of like, we have seen Wreck-It Ralph and Lego Batman and Ready Player One.
Do that until Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Space Jam: A New Legacy, of course. But you are expecting him to, assemble the dream team.
But I mean, but then why call attention to it? Why go like, oh my gosh, I just got out of the room over here with Freddy Krueger. It's like, now you're not going to see that.
Smiling
You can't have him circling movies in the paper that look like, oh, absolutely.
and we are all over the place. But when Dance does the monologue of like, I'm going to go get Hannibal Lecter, I do start doing the thing of like, do those movies air within his movie?
Right, because Jack Slater doesn't know about Amadeus.
No, but that's sort of
he hasn't
plausible.
seen Terminator 2.
But he might have seen... No, he has seen Terminator 2.
Jack Slater
with
has?
Stallone.
Dracula.
With Stallone.
But he doesn't recognize Patrick.
No.
So in that reality, does someone else play the T-1000 as well?
T-1000.
And there is Dracula in the Jack Slater world because when they're in Blockbuster,
we see it, but
there.
But like when Charles Dance is like, right, I'm going to get all these guys. I'm like, has he caught up on pop culture in the 40 minutes since he exited his fictional universe, or is he referencing the mirror version pop culture of his fictional universe? Instead, he should have just been like, "I'm going to shoot you, kid." Like I think at that point maybe let's.
But also,
drop
like,
it.
does Charles Dance say like, Hannibal Lecter, famously played by Michael Gambon? Like, does he have his own?
But here's the other thing that I think about, and I just realized it as you said it. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too by also creating a Wreck-It Ralph. Like Wreck-It Ralph at night, they all gather together.
This is a point I want to make. Thank you, Paul.
And in the police station,
like when people stop watching the movie, does the movie just carry on and then they just chill out? Right.
Right. And the idea being like that police station is every movie. That's not the Jack Slater police station, because you have people like that look like they're in Demolition Man. You have people, you have a cartoon cat. You have cartoon cat doesn't feel tonally like in the Jack Slater movie, even though he says he's in a Jack Slater movie. But like that same thing. It's like,
this is a fair point.
But like, make it clear to us that the cat is in a Roger Rabbit or a movie, a Cool World movie that they're doing over there.
There's one police precinct in Movie World where all police are dispatched.
You guys are asking a fundamental question, which is this film presupposes that he has been sucked into quote unquote Jack Slater 4.
Right. And everything we're seeing is part of Jack Slater 4.
Right. But if that were true, Jack Slater 4 would be the most dysfunctional film ever created.
Correct.
And what has actually happened is he's been sucked into quote unquote Movie World.
But then the rules later are clear that like Dance has to go find a film print of a different movie if he wants to enter that movie, right? He has to get the fucking canister if he wants to enter that film. He has to hold Prosky at gunpoint.
If he could like then drive to like Sony Pictures Classics World, and there it's like a Merchant Ivory film, and then he could drive to. But anyway,
like Wreck-It Ralph
also,
just
if you want to talk about logic here too, it's like a movie ticket falls in front of a theater that then activates one of the characters in that movie who is arguably a couple hundred feet away from that ticket to exit the screen. I mean, that to me, I'm like, oh, I'm here. I'm on for the ride. But that's also lazy as shit.
I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. Yes.
I was thinking Wreck-It Ralph as well while watching this, because Wreck-It Ralph is such a good example of like the right amount of answers in a world that is silly and just like creates the paths for you of, okay, the games are where they live. That's their job. If the kids stop playing them, they go home, right?
At night, they go home.
That's just Toy Story.
Well, no, but hold on.
Hold on, David.
Because I made the exact same comparison point with The Precinct, right? Wreck-It Ralph has the thing that is the surge protector.
Yes, they live inside
that all the games are plugged into. No, they don't live there.
Well, they can go there
the place
to commune.
They can all go in the middle,
and
right?
go to their other games.
They all live in their separate games, but there's this central hub that they can all go to. As you said, that is not what The Precinct is in this movie. In construction, we're watching this as if this were a scene in Jack Slater 4, but obviously the movie is being warped by Danny being in it. As you said, they're different characters in this from other films we've seen and from fake made-up movies. When Danny calls out, like, can you see this as a movie? There's a cartoon cat there. Jack Slater goes, yeah, he should be here. He's, what did he say? He was only on probation for 4 weeks or whatever.
Yes,
There's some joke.
Right. I mean, you're gesturing to me like I wrote the line. I don't remember it.
You did take a pass at this movie. And they did pay you $1 million.
7-year-old David.
That cat is one of the best men I've got.
Right.
It says the lieutenant.
So you're like,
which proves to be true, by the way. The cat is pretty good.
He's great.
Yeah, Whiskers is good.
But like that character, the McCrae character is Jack Slater's lieutenant, who Danny recognizes from those movies. Whiskers is not from the Jack Slater movies, but both of those Jack Slater characters acknowledge it. When I was 14 or 15, I'm watching this like Danny being like, this is what you're talking about. What are the rules? Why can't you make some basic Wreck-It Ralph type logic leap to understand which characters exist?
And what does grown-up Griffin Newman, host of Blank Check, say?
I was like, this is fun.
Yeah,
this is fun and silly, and I like it, and I want to live in this precinct.
Yes, I love that precinct.
Yeah, I agree.
That when I was a kid, I think what happened to me and why I wanted to walk out of this movie, why I did walk out of this movie,
walked all the way out.
Was because I didn't understand what it was going for. It felt to me like I think I was an unsophisticated audience member. I didn't get I was like, this cat is dumb. Not this is making fun of
dumb,
this type
Pucci-esque, whatever. Right. Yeah.
I hated the head of the police precinct, the lead cop, who I think is
smoke coming out of his ears, which is a true Zucker brothers.
Frank McRae, of course, who is
Frank McRae.
Basically plays this character in 48 Hours, among other things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that to me, and I think maybe that's my sensibility as a kid was I get Hot Shots, those are jokes. I get Airplane, Top Secret. This walked a line that was a little bit more a little harder to parse. I think because it's playing it for real.
I think because it's unsuccessful. I think because it's neither nor.
Yeah.
It's not that's a failing of the movie. It's not a failing of you, the audience.
No, this is
my
an
opinion.
absolute neither fish nor fowl movie, and it's neither fish nor fowl nor rodent nor insect.
Also argue
it's six things.
Can I argue that this is just the Neanderthal version of Wreck-It Ralph? Like this is the necessary evolutionary step to these later movies that are then like, here are the very clear rules of our universe. Where I'm like, I like rules. Like I've talked about that, right? Like I love a good world building. Like that's fine, but also sometimes it can feel a little clean.
Yes.
And the messiness of this movie, is it because they had, basically like 2 to 3 days to, cast, direct, write, shoot, maybe, but I kind of like the messiness.
But this is why I like Barbie. Like Barbie, I don't understand a lot about how Barbie works. I don't get it.
That Barbie is
but
messy.
I love it.
Yes. Barbie also has the same ending where it's like, well, what are you going to do now, Barbie, now that you are imbued with knowledge of like worlds beyond this? She's like, I don't know. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. Like,
I think it is truly an under-discussed aspect of why people found Barbie so refreshing is that it does not spend 45 minutes explaining how they move back and forth between the worlds.
Just go for the ride.
What they do give you is a bit. You have to get in the car, to get on a boat, to get on a rocket, it's a joke, and the joke bit services multiple trips back and forth to Barbie World. This movie is uninterested in Danny's experience being different inside the movie than out. Arnold, his opinion is not changed by being in the real world or not. Like, there is no, because there's no rules, when they break them, it's not clear what is at stake. There is no, oh no, Doc, I'm disappearing from the picture, a la Marty McFly. There is no stakes. There is no ticking clock. There is no, we're not in the beats of the action movie such that we're trapped in them.
No, and the movie is kind of like poorly sketched out, I would say. Beyond he needs to get revenge for his favorite second cousin.
Yeah, but that's a good joke.
It's a great joke.
Yeah.
But I'd also argue, I think where the movie actually makes a little bit of a misstep as well is the one moment that I think what Barbie recognizes in Barbie is like the world around her. And I don't think that Jack Slater, that's a part where I'm like, oh, Schwarzenegger doesn't go there in this movie. Like, he goes, oh, my hand hurts, but he still punches through the glass. Yeah. Oh, he still pulls the guy out of the car. Like, he's not like, I want the Superman 2 of it all.
He rips a car door off.
Yeah, I want
in the real world.
I want the Superman 2 of blood.
Nothing.
The blood.
Right.
Yeah, like he could be strong. Or when he shoots, he misses. Like,
or how about he realizes the existential dread of living in a world in which the bad guys often win, and a world in which this boy's life is an absolute tragedy and a nightmare, and that those are issues that should be addressed instead of like, well, just let the kid get the gun.
Well,
and then we can work from there.
Him staying up all night talking to Mercedes Rule is fascinating. This sort of like one dead end scene where Danny goes to sleep, wakes up, they're flirting. He's sort of like, ew, gross, cooties. And then Schwarzenegger is like, first of all, this is insane. I never realized you could talk to a woman before, right? And you start actually like interrogating the reality of his movie in an interesting way, which is like every woman in his life is either a shrew, a sexual conquest,
sex object,
or his like overly sexy daughter who he can't think of that way.
Who is a really funny, Bridget Wilson is a really funny gag.
Yes.
Like she is the most implausible creation in the universe.
Like,
when she's driving the
Hummer,
monster truck,
yeah.
I love that that's her character.
So
by the way, why isn't it Bridget Wilson? Why does she have to have a fake name? With Schwarzenegger, it should be Bridget Wilson, right? I mean, could we? Yeah, at this point, why not? Come on.
Because she's already.
Oh yeah, she's quote unquote Meredith Caprice or what? Like that's the
Has
actress.
she already done Mortal Kombat at this point?
Well, no, Mortal Kombat's like
Billy
2
Madison?
years later.
No. Okay.
This is her film acting debut.
Wow.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Oh, wow.
So technically,
She's great.
it would have been a double joke because
Yeah.
it's Meredith Caprice's film acting debut
They should have
as well.
She had been on the soap opera Santa Barbara before this.
Fair enough.
And of course, she was Miss Teen USA.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have her all blonde in a red bathing suit top as if she's in Baywatch.
Yes.
You know, I'm like, oh, they're just throwing cultural things in here. They're just putting iconography in just to tether it to the time, not necessarily capitalize on that stuff. They're just like, well, you know this too. You recognize this.
This is the other thing I kind of love about this movie, and it's like what we're all agreeing on, that like the fundamental problem of this film is everyone's too close to it to parody the thing. They're parodying themselves, all this sort of stuff.
The struggle they have, yes,
right. The thing you get only from hiring the people who made the stuff to try to make fun of themselves is like, with distance, this movie almost feels like, here's a comparison point. It almost feels like Rules of the Game, where it's a movie about like a type of society that's about to collapse.
Sure.
Right? Where this is the movie that is like the embodiment of this certain kind of like 90s studio excess bloat that is starting to course correct right after this movie. This is one of the films that has such a big fallout in its bomb.
Yes.
And as we said, like the press attacking this movie so hard, within a couple years, the internet will have the power to do this in a way that is so much harder to control. It's not just one guy at the LA Times who's got an axe to grind with you. Now it's suddenly anyone on the internet can talk shit about your movie and kill Batman and Robin, you know? And it's like this movie.
And there comes to be like the internet for many years in that early stage, like a site like Ain't It Cool News is trafficking exclusively in rumors from test screenings and
early drafts
sneak
of
previews
and stuff like that.
Exactly, stuff like that. That's like their bread and butter.
Like leaks from like PAs and secretaries, you know, the people at the lowest rungs of the industry who are like shooting off leaks of things they overheard. This movie just ends up being shooting off leaks, baby.
Jesus.
This movie just ends up being like this incredible soup of like everything that was insane in culture in the 90s all crammed into one movie.
Well, it also is it's not commenting enough on, it is the kind of movie that these movies were now being criticized for doing, which was just being absolute gun festivals for little boys.
Right, and this
like
weird thing that
these movies are for kids now explicitly, not just like, oh no, kids are watching Commando and Predator on TV all the time. It's like, oh no, this is for them. We need a surrogate for children in these movies, so that's what this is.
It feels unsafe about this movie, which I like.
Yes.
I like that
when
too.
the kid's running around with a gun, I really had late in the action sequence, even though like this is a heightened tone, this is not a real place.
Yeah.
I was like, they would never show that in a PG-13 film.
not.
Like, you would never have a kid carrying a handgun.
No way.
Here's a movie I'm going to shout out that to me has this movie, but a better version of it. And it is Cloak and Dagger.
I was going to bring that
the
up.
real
Yes,
Jason
love
Paul.
it.
That is a real Jason pick. Yes, right. The 1984's with Henry
Bought it on
Thomas.
Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah.
They have a great redo of it.
Dabney.
I love Dabney Coleman. There is a very bad quality but very good, interesting documentary on Amazon that is just over an hour of Dabney Coleman just telling stories
while chomping a cigar.
Fantastic.
I mean, I think that like what we're saying is this movie, people have been trying to make movies like this. Like Cloak and Dagger, I think, was one that also wasn't a hit, but it was a hit for me because I watch it all the time on HBO, right? And then I start to look at Zach Penn and I go, oh, Zach Penn has done this multiple times. Zach Penn did Ready Player One or wrote a version of it. He wrote Free Guy, right? He has gone back into this well of what would it be like if you are in or out of this world? Like he is this kid. He is this 11-year-old kid. And he's, I think, continually trying to break what this is. I think that you have great versions of it, which is like Galaxy Quest. And I think that you have like middling versions of it that we've all know what those are. But it's like, I feel like this movie, the fact that it got made on this level is impressive. It's fun to watch because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they pulled all this crazy stuff off. But I also wonder if it's like, we appreciate it more now because it was bolder than anything that had come out at that point, right?
Yeah,
it didn't try to go in these ways.
Absolutely. And the thing it's mocking at the time this movie comes out, people were starting to get tired of, whereas now, as David said, we have a fondness for it.
Right.
So we both like them mocking it and like seeing any representation of it before it disappeared.
And
go ahead, Jason.
Go ahead,
David.
Jason, you know what? I think you need to
David, I'm so mad at you. I demand that you talk. Our friendship hangs in the balance.
I just cannot imagine what horseshit it must have seemed like to a 30-something movie viewer that you would watch Jack Slater in a crumbling old beautiful red velvet movie house. Like, what absolute nonsense that is. Like a movie house where you should be watching Lawrence of Arabia. It's Cinema Paradiso. Robert Prosky should be like, hey kid, let me show you some of the greats. Instead he's like, you want me to run Jack Slater 4 for you? I'm going to go into diabetic coma while that happens. Like, there's the weird, like, nostalgia dressing for trash.
Yes.
But then I watch this and I'm like, America was at its best when Jack Slater 4 was the kind of material being made.
You bring up Galaxy Quest, which is obviously like an incredible comparison point to this, right? And as you said, the fact that Galaxy Quest is Tim Allen to the audience immediately communicates to them what movie they're watching. It's a sitcom comedy guy playing the Shatner rather than picking a Shatner-esque serious action star. And that sort of like tone setting helps people lock into what it is, right? This movie starts with, it feels like almost 10 minutes of straight Jack Slater 3, which is like, okay, we get it. It's sort of like an intensified, over-the-top version of Schwarzenegger. But also, Schwarzenegger's movies are already pretty over-the-top. You can't heighten them too much.
I just want to just piggyback on this and say it's also huge.
Huge.
The first 10 minutes are hundreds of extras.
Yes, humongous.
Enormous set pieces, big, long tracking shots. Like, McTiernan is shooting the shit out of the Jack Slade movie.
Beautiful anamorphic lensing, like all of that. And then we get to the rooftop, and it's like, oh, this villain's really bad. He's kidnapped 15 children.
Right.
One of them is Slater's son. And also the Ripper is not like a Hans Gruber. The Ripper is like he's Freddy Krueger.
Right.
Yeah. He's a monster.
He's a cartoon monster.
So already for the audience, I think they're like, wait, what am I tracking this onto? Because like Rambo 3 wouldn't have a villain like the Ripper. What is this? Is this supposed to be like a badass cop movie, but the villain's supernatural? Am I supposed to think he looks normal? This thing with the kids more intense.
Everything's plus 211 or whatever.
This is a bad rewrite because this is like Zach Penn said, that's not me. I didn't write that. Are you crazy? And I feel like that somebody along the way said, we need to give Jack Slater something. And so they come up with, what if he couldn't save his own kid? Right. So now they're retconning that and then they do that opening. So it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like Cobra. It doesn't feel like Die Hard. It doesn't feel like Rambo. It doesn't feel like
there's
anything.
not a one-to-one. And then it's interrupted by Prosky falling asleep. And then we go to the first exchange with the kid and Prosky. And McTiernan on the commentary is just like, I got to say it. Prosky 100% nailed the tone of this movie. The movie that this sort of should have been, what I was trying to make that I didn't have the courage to do. He's like, you watch it and he's in the movie that is the version that makes sense to audiences. And he's like, he just keeps saying, God, all of this dialogue is like nonsense. And he's making it sound real.
Look, he's one of the greats. I believe, what's the line I write out on the Thief episode? It's something, because he was like a regional theater actor.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Thief was like his first movie. At the age of 50?
Thief was?
Thief
was his first movie?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, got it.
Like, he's just regarded as like one of the like greatest like productions of regional theater in America.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, one of the, by productions, I mean, like, it just made him the man he is. He arrives in movies as this like fully formed adult Santa Claus.
Like grown up.
Yeah.
And by the time he's in, this is the same year as Mrs. Doubtfire.
Sure.
By this time it's like Prosky, it's like almost lazy to cast him. There's nothing wrong with casting him.
But yet he never phones it in. And
no, he doesn't
ability, I would say the control this guy has over the dial of knowing exactly what movie he's in and how to serve that to the point that McTiernan's like, he got it better than I did. Yes. Everyone else should have been studying what Prosky was doing. He actually has a sense of humor.
I don't think that McTiernan has he doesn't, like, McTiernan didn't get the script, I feel like.
Yes, and the devil thing you're saying makes a ton of sense because you're like, in the Zach Penn draft originally, they were like, we don't want to explain the magic, we don't want to explain the rules.
Right, there's not even a ticket. It just happens.
Then Columbia's like, we need to like come up with some internal rules for this. You get to this being a torture, you get to like whatever, right? Prosky is like saying gobbledygook that is like half sketched out. And when he says it, you're like, I do believe in the magic of the movies, and I believe in literal magic handed down by Harry Houdini that is retained in physical objects for decades.
And there's so much of the movie that I'm like having trouble getting access to and getting into. And part of it is what you're talking about, of lack of rules and a lack of understanding. But all of this, testament to Prosky.
Testament to Prosky.
And same thing with the Mercedes rule stuff. That feels like I think they only have 2 scenes together. It feels like an absolutely lived in single mother and her latchkey son. Like, I get that world as much as I get the Prosky and Danny world of the dilapidated movie theater and this is the only place of solace, blah, blah, blah. But the rest of it, the fantasy world that we enter into, I can't get it's such a mess to me that I can't get I can't get my feet under me. And that's it seems to, as it goes on for me, feel less and less fun because I want it to keep upsetting the apple cart and providing new movement. But I felt trapped inside of the Jack Slater world.
Let's say
I guess.
Yes, the story of the movie within the movie is they kill his favorite second cousin. Now he wants revenge. He was
Art Carney, who dies on screen for his final film role, kind of does a good job. Like, kind of, again, it's kind of Art Carney being like, you just lob me the meatball.
Right.
I'll knock it out.
I also feel like he gets the tone too, like the way he dies like that. He's like, oh no, or whatever he says.
Right.
It's great.
But then the plot of the movie, as it were, is just they need to get revenge, and they're trying to track down, what's his name?
Tony Vivaldi, who is Anthony Quinn, is like the quote unquote antagonist.
Right.
Mr. Benedict, his sidekick with the tattooed
Evil
eyes.
The glass eyes.
Explosive glass eyes that change color. And
he's got a collection.
That, he's bad. F. Murray Abraham is introduced as like Jack Slater's quote unquote friend.
Right.
The kid keeps being like, I wish he almost said, this is F. Murray Abraham in the 90s.
Yes.
This guy only plays
It's funny that he only calls him out.
He killed Mozart.
Right. The Salieri thing is funny, but it also, like, you want him to be a savvy enough kid that he literally says, like, look, this is F. Murray Abraham. He won an Oscar. You don't get him in for this part unless he turns out to be a villain at the end.
He makes no sense as your friend.
Exactly.
Right.
His part is too small not to lead to a reverse in the third act.
Yes, there should be more of that fun. The movie ultimately feels to me, I think what is unsuccessful about it, which I think, and maybe this comes down to our age difference, is that I think the movie more successfully works for a younger audience.
No question. It works for Paul's kids.
Yeah.
It seems to be courting their love for this kind of bombast and this
silliness,
style.
Right. Yeah.
Versus the people who have made in this era all of the movies that are being, paid tribute to huge successes. This is not for the Rambo, Predator, Commando crowd. This is not for the Jean-Claude Van Damme, Charles Bronson crowd.
And as we've been alluding to, the rise of VHS and the rise of like cable television, more movies playing on TV, means that in 1993, most kids the age of Danny have been sneakily watching the real grown-up R-rated versions of these movies
that had become
for 7 years.
And that's why this movie exists. This movie only exists because kids have driven the other movies into massive success.
Correct. We long tail successes, but then those kids are also going, why would I watch the version of this that's made for me? I like the thrill of watching the one that I shouldn't be watching.
But I think that, like, this is, again,
your kids don't have that comparison point. Your kids are watching this as its own object.
And they're just watching it because they think it's so funny and so crazy. And so it is like a Looney Tunes cartoon. Yes. It does feel like that. It just feels like, oh, this is people shooting guns. You don't see any blood. So it's not like, it's scary, but not too scary. It's bombastic. They're kind of fascinated by Schwarzenegger just as like his size and personality. It's like,
that's weird.
Like,
he looks normal.
They freaked out. It was so funny to watch them freak out in that moment when they pull into that alleyway and they have like the cars butt each other's heads like that, and they go into like that room full of women in like lingerie or like bikinis, like they're just a room full of bikini women, which again I was like, is that
women
a holding
dressed
area?
As cars? The women were dressed as cars.
Yes.
I didn't know if that was a holding area for other actors in the movie or if that was just a scene. Because like, oh, is that reminiscent of like Blazing Saddles where they kind of crash into like the set where Dom DeLuise is like conducting something?
But once
because
again,
all the women were
does not have any reality like that. I do like the bit. It's your background on Zoom, Paul. But that when they go to Blockbuster, everyone who works there is literally a supermodel. Every customer is literally a super. Like it's Angie
There's no
Everhart
ugly women. Like that was a funny joke. There's no ugly women here in our world, and that and I think that was like a really. But this is what I think why I like the movie so much and why I'm disappointed by the movie so much. It goes right up to these lines and pulls away. There's a great moment when with the reveal of Practice, the F. Murray Abraham character, where he takes him to the side of the hotel. And they go to this back alley, and every garbage can is painted solid gold. And it's like, oh, that is a production designer going, oh, this is funny. I'm going to have 3 solid gold trash cans here. They're like, it's
in
like
the universe of Jack Slater, even trash can't be dirty.
Right. And I was like, and you have that right there. It's like you're doing these, like, it's sort of like everyone is under their own idea of what this movie is. And unfortunately, I think the director probably was the least informed about what the parody of
or
it
didn't
is.
have the guts, like you said.
Right.
Yeah,
Or didn't have the guts. Right.
Cowardly is the word he keeps using. There's the scene, one of the scenes where Danny and Slater are in the car, and in the background, cars keep on crashing.
Oh, so funny.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And McTiernan's like, I didn't go far enough with this. I like
agree with
this
that too.
idea that this guy has no awareness of the collateral damage he's causing because the universe just sort of like creates set pieces around him. But it's done in a way that is actually so restrained that I think for us watching it today,
almost hard to notice.
we're like, this is kind of impressive and skillful. And he's like, I think most people miss that it's happening.
I was like actually telling my kids, like, look at that. Let's see what's going on. Then they started to catch it. Here's what I'll say
And that shit's
about
expensive and complicated. Like he's putting it on screen in a way that you might not notice.
Even 20 years after this or so, they still will struggle to figure out how to do this correctly in The Other Guys. Like The Other Guys is a similar style
it's like,
comedic homage to the action set, the action comedies of the 1980s and early 90s.
And how surreal are we allowed to be is and that movie gets it more correct, I would say.
I would agree.
Or at least it plays with
like
the dial in a way that
the best
you accept.
being the guys who jump off the roof in the beginning. You know, it's such a funny beat, and like Anchorman has some of these similar things. Like they're playing with these things in a way that is truly leaning into the absurdity being funny. And this movie just keeps wanting to point at things, being like, right? It's from the movies.
Right. It's like it's the Remember Berries.
It's a reference.
Right.
Thing.
It's like that's the South Park thing. It's like it's just saying the thing and going, that's a joke. And it's not always a joke. And I want to just
Danny calls it out, and then every other character in the movie goes, shut the fuck up.
I want to bring up a film that I have not seen that came out also in 1993 that perhaps Ben has seen.
Interesting.
Given its profile, which is National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1.
Oh, I owned it on Laserdisc.
Owned it on Laserdisc.
Owned
that
it
movie
on Laserdisc.
I have not seen,
this,
but that is
course.
a direct spoof of 80s.
That's Airplane. It's
right.
Hot
That's
Shots
just them being like, can we do
so
it's Emilio Estevez and Samuel L. Jackson.
So it like stars 2 guys who could have starred in the real version of that movie, and the joke is they put the 1 in the title, and we're already making fun of franchise success on the first one.
Right. Loaded Weapon 1. Get it?
I do get it. I've never seen it.
Wow.
I figured this might have been a Comedy Central movie, but honestly, that might not have even made it to Comedy Central. I don't know.
I would love a spoof series on the Patreon, boys.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Hot Shots Part 2. Come on now.
That's not. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's not just Zucker Brothers or something like that, but that is a curated series of just spoof.
Jane Austen's Mafia.
We would eventually kill each other.
But just choose 6.
Right, that's the thing.
6.
Like people pitch Pittsburgh Seltzer, but we don't want to do all of that. Can you pick one of each?
Yeah, we find some platter. What do you want to say about Loaded Weapon 1?
A budget of Loaded Weapon, $8 million. How much did it make?
I mean, how much did it make? 10?
It made
65.
Yeah, it made $51 million worldwide.
Yeah.
$51 million on a
enormous
$8 million movie is giant.
Yeah.
At a time when no movie has made $1 billion.
Right. And they didn't make a sequel to that.
It's the same year as Last Action Hero.
Right. This movie costs $80 million. It probably costs another $50 million to promote, and it makes 60. It ends up at around the same number as Loaded Weapon. I guess this did more worldwide. It was 60 domestic.
This movie lost money.
Tremendous
This movie
amount of money.
posted
For sure.
a loss of
For
tens
sure.
of millions of dollars.
Yes.
Yes.
But here's what I was going to say about to Griffin's point, and this is just something that you said it now, it finally clicked with me. He says cowardly. And I wonder if you have McTiernan at this point in his career where he's like, I am making a movie about making fun of the movies that I make.
Mhm.
Am I past my prime? And he's struggling with, if I do this well, I eradicate myself.
Right. I can never go back to doing it for real again.
Right. And he's walking this line where it's like, I am signaling the death knell of the thing that makes me successful. And that's what his career becomes. It goes down.
Well, and it's fascinating that his immediate response to this movie is Die Hard 3. He's like, what's the safest possible move I can do? And by the way, in the time since I made Die Hard, they made a sequel without me that was Die Hard again in a different location. I'm now basically bringing McTiernan bombast to Die Hard. Like, Die Hard starts to become a different size. Where you're 100%. Like, Die Hard is no longer one guy stuck in a space doing a thing. Now it's just
Die Hard 3 is massive.
Exactly.
You know, it's New York City. That's the Sam Jackson one, right?
It was a building, an airport, New York City.
Exactly. And he's basically like, look, if the next movie has Die Hard in the title and it stars Bruce Willis as John McClane, they'll let me do my thing. And that's maybe the only area in which they're going to let me do my thing my way again. Because I've kind of like punctured the air out of my own balloon at this point.
It's also interesting, the Die Hard movies, as they progress, get less and less comedic. They are less and less interested in John McClane being funny, quippy, ill-suited for the circumstances. He becomes a action star, like a Sly, an Arnold. He goes from being the David Addison style Bruce Willis character to being, bulletproof.
Yeah, and Vengeance is like, I think, fairly funny, but it's mostly Sam Jack comedy.
Vengeance is very funny. We're going to talk about it.
It is funny. It is funny. It is funny. It's just McClane himself is less the comedic motor of that movie.
Yes.
I mean, I always go back to the Kevin Smith interview. Kevin Smith interviewing Bruce Willis.
He will have done Die Hard episode on this show by this point in time.
And this is just like,
wait, Kevin did your Die Hard?
Yeah. I cannot
Incredible.
wait.
Locked in.
Kevin Smith is interviewing is Bruce Willis, and this is on the set of their Die Hard movie. Yeah.
And their Die Hard. Yes.
Sorry, not their Die Hard. Whatever the Kevin Smith, Tracy Moore. Yeah, Cop Out.
Yeah.
And so he goes, what is the secret of these movies? And Bruce Willis just goes, I think the New Jersey sense of humor. That's what people come for. And I was like, well, you clearly don't know why New Jersey sense of humor is not the reason why Die Hard works.
I'm
New
pretty
Jersey
sure
sense
John McClane defeats Hans Gruber with a grinder sandwich.
Correct.
Though. Yeah. So I think you're right.
Don't call him grinder.
I know. Sorry.
Call
What
him
do you call them?
subs.
No. But what's the big sandwiches you can get at like
a sub?
No, but the ones that have like mozzarella
Hoagie?
sticks in them.
Oh,
That are like gut busters.
like in
like
New
living
Brunswick.
heart attack
I feel like
sandwiches.
the Taylor Ham joke would have been cleaner.
I
Sure.
fucked up. I'm probably because we've been on Zoom for 2.5 hours
Okay,
and I
so
feel
let's
insane.
fucking bring Shane Black in and have him do a pass on your jokes.
What are they called?
I'm looking it up.
But anyway,
Gutbuster is a good
fat sandwiches they call them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, like I like
Classic
Fat
New
South.
Jersey
Fat
intellect
South.
went into naming of
South.
that one.
Yeah.
Hey.
Bam. Ben's looking alive again.
Rude.
I have a question for you guys, just because we're in this kind of general McTiernan period. What I have now, I looked it up and I've seen them all except for Nomads. What was Nomads
Jason,
like?
Look, Griff and I both are firing up Nomads, basically ready to be like
Secret
a
masterpiece.
tight little indie, thriller.
Incredible calling card movie is what you want.
That's what I want. I wanted it to be the used cars of this series.
Nomads is one of the most like you're just like it never takes off. I guess is the best way to put it.
No.
Like it never really gets to thriller or horror or whatever.
My biggest takeaway from watching Nomads is anyone who watched this and thought this guy should direct Predator was a genius.
Yeah, which by the answer is Arnold
which apparently
Schwarzenegger.
was Schwarzenegger.
Right, but I don't I don't see it in there. And the answer I came up with is purely just Predator was not taken seriously as a movie. So they just saw 90 minutes that a guy successfully finished and went, why not hand it to him? But that's also
I recommend watching it, Jason, just in terms of a like WTF kind of
No, I'll watch it. I'll watch it actually when this series starts because I'll watch it concurrent with the episodes.
But when David brought up in the dossier that McTiernan tried to take a couple passes at the script himself,
that's the only film he
Nomads is the only film he has a writing credit on, and you're like, okay, so this guy shouldn't do this. Yeah, that is not his skill set.
Got it. Okay.
It also has Pierce Brosnan doing a French accent, which goes as well as you think
it sounds
it's going to go.
Exactly how you think it would.
Interesting. That's hilarious. As good as he would have Sean Connery's Russian accent in Hunt for Red October.
He makes Sean Connery look like a 10th generation Russian.
Yes.
Okay.
Like a Romanov.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's another McTiernan commentary thing, right? He keeps talking about like his early days, right? And he's like, one of my jobs before I had made it was like I managed an opera house.
Yes, he did. That's right.
And I would sort of like manage the construction of the sets. And F. Murray Abraham was one of the guys who would pick up midnight shifts when he couldn't get acting jobs to come in and help like hammer boards together to build these opera sets and whatever.
Talk about how we both loved and hated Mozart.
Yes.
No, go on.
He talks about all this stuff with a real like romanticism, right? He talks about when they're shooting the New York leg of this movie, working with the Irish Teamsters, the New York Teamster Union, being in the trenches with those guys at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he also just says like, look, I went to AFI. I made student films. I was used to working on movies with a crew of like 10 all in, including cast.
Right.
And he's like, honestly, that's my favorite way to work and I miss it. And when you work on a movie of this size, it gets tough to like steer the machinery, especially when it's a movie that now a studio is taking its identity on. It is fascinating that he is just saying this and he's bemoaning this. And I know he's saying this in 2021 or whatever, right? With a decade out of prison and such. But like, he just kept getting bigger and he couldn't scale it down.
Yeah.
Like the guy never was able to, even when he makes Thomas Crown Affair and he goes, look, this is a more adult film. This is a more mature film. He just could never make something really of a smaller size.
Well, Medicine Man is the closest he comes to that.
And we talk about that Medicine Man is too big for what he's trying to do.
He keeps being like, it's really just like an art movie. And it's just like, no, it isn't. Like
he's thinking that way because it costs $50 million.
Yeah, and none of them are interested in being funny.
No.
None of them.
No, and Medicine Man's trying to be funny as well.
Is it really? I don't remember. I've seen it, but I mean,
Medicine Man's going for a little bit of like African Queen banter.
Yeah, okay, got it.
I see.
Lorraine Bracco, gives this like really, it's low key, I would say, is what I would describe her performance.
Muted.
Right? Muted performance as a woman who can't stop just being like,
What's the medicine? Oh my God! We gotta cure the cancer!
I just want to say that was such a small performance that Zoom absolutely cut it out so that we couldn't hear anything. And it was just David visually gesticulating wildly.
Perfect.
But the audio was completely cut for me.
Perfect.
It's one of those performances where you're like, can someone put a blood pressure monitor on her just to make sure that she's okay?
I'm worried. You get nervous.
I'm anxious.
The direction was, it's Karen from Goodfellas times 10.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there not? I know everyone's going to yell at me.
Oh boy.
Is there anything else we want to talk about from the film Last Action Hero before I play the box office game?
Absolutely. David, thank you for asking. I have at least 1 hour of notes left. I'm so glad you opened it up rather than just segueing right into the box office.
I would like
game.
to ask just, please.
Yes, David.
Let's make it a little faster than an hour without
David,
trying to provoke you. I'm
David,
like the Rancor Keeper right now.
I am behind on handing in a copy edit of my book. I stayed up until 4 a.m. knowing I had to record this podcast because it was going to take up all my time today.
David, I would like to already say thank you. Mm-hmm. It is after 5 p.m. there, and you are still in the office, which I very much appreciate. Yes. I know that is almost impossible for you.
Right. Well, my wife is alone with the toddler right now.
I just want the audio, the listeners at home to know your physical position is propping yourself up as if you're about to jump out
Jason,
of your chair.
What you can't see is that he is gripping the armrest of the chair with an intensity.
He's like
as such.
He's like
the
this.
chair is bleeding.
It's as if he can at any moment be like, and
it's sort of what I'm going to do, just to warn you two guys when we stop recording. But I do believe in the last time you guys were on the show, I ran away at a certain point, and you guys recorded for another 20 minutes.
Is that true?
I went away to take a phone call one time, and I came back.
That was the other one.
It came back.
That was the other one.
An hour later, we're still talking.
And I want to be clear, David, you left angrily. You left, you were mad.
Big Trouble in Little China, I believe, was the episode.
Oh, right.
Yes.
I don't think that's true. I think I literally had to relieve.
No.
my wife.
I'm being hyperbolic, but it was very funny to watch you get more and more frustrated with how long
it's just funny how it's these episodes, as much as I now have wrapped more rubber bands around my life and it makes a little more sense to me and I have a little more control, these episodes are where they start snapping off all of a sudden. I'm very panicked.
Specifically Paul and Jason?
I feel like the first one, that's early COVID fever dream shit where we're just where Paul could just go take a call, come back, and we're still on because the hell else are we going to do?
And by the way, I did 90 minutes before I took that call.
I came on your show to talk about Justice League, the Snyder Cut, when my daughter was 3 weeks old. Whew. Yeah. So,
which was the more important birth for you of 2021, the Snyder Cut or your daughter?
My daughter.
Two things that you'd been wondering if you'd ever be lucky enough to witness them with your own eyes.
It's very true.
Release the daughter cut.
Release the daughter cut.
My daughter's
your daughter
take
should
on
take
the
a pass
Justice
at
League.
Snyder's Justice League.
Ben, how did you feel about this movie? Did Ben watch this movie?
I did watch the movie, and I actually have never seen it.
Had never seen it. Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
I would have thought you had.
Yeah. And I feel like you guys have said quite a lot about it already. So
sounds like Ben's also trying to get out quick.
I thought it fucking stunk.
Okay.
Oh boy.
All right. Now that would have been my guess.
Sorry to say
that I'm with Ben.
I thought it stunk.
The only reason I would have thought maybe you'd be won over by it is it's something of a 12-year-old Ben Hosley fantasy to get sucked into an action movie.
Yes.
And so there's kids living that out.
Yep.
But my guess is
you
didn't
handling giant guns.
Right. But my guess is you didn't like the kid.
Can I ask a question? I think this is can I just jump in because I'm going to predict that what Ben didn't like about it is the kid should have murdered people in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what he was supposed to do.
I feel like Ben thinks it's too sanitized.
Well, I definitely, if I was put into that situation, I would have taken more advantage of the fictional world.
Give us some examples.
There's no rules.
Examples, Ben?
Start a fire.
Good.
Sure.
Steal stuff.
A thing you can't do in the real world.
Well, you can, but there's consequence.
Sure.
That would be so interesting if Danny, realizing he's in the movies, started to excitedly participate in the movies.
Crimes.
And drive the action, start to be a main character rather than just a sidekick.
But I think that this is where the movie flirts. It's why I love this movie on some level, because it flirts with it. When he's driving his bike to the car, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then he's like, oh, I'm comic relief, which I think was a little bit of a hard sell because I don't think he is comic relief. He kind of mislabels himself. But that that's the awareness that I feel like, oh, he can't, no matter what he does, he can't. And that's why I love the say this word scene. Right? Say this word.
Yes. That's a good gag. That feels like a Shane Black thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's a really funny, it's weirdly placed in the film because it's like after a giant action scene and so much stuff has gone over and he's like, huh. And he's like, oh, you're still on trying to prove to him that he's in a movie?
Right.
Like I loved that. I loved that scene. And the other scene that I really loved, which again is linked in my mind and similar, but the movie to me needed more of this is the scene where Jack Slater reveals that his ex-wife is happily remarried and that he has someone from the coffee shop or whatever call and pretend to be his ex-wife.
Pretend to be his ex-wife, who he then performatively goes like, oh, ball and chain, and plays the tape labeled Shrew.
And has a recorded, he's made a cassette. Like that whole thing, I was like, I want to know about the guy who, you know, in that Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon way has lost his wife and doesn't know, and that he has something, that there's something interesting there, but it's kind of a gag and it's not really, you know, investigated. Anyway, that's similar to what we were talking about before, but
it's a big thing. McTiernan said on the commentary that, like, you know, when you see Danny's apartment with Mercedes Rule, he wanted it to be depressing in a very specific New York way, right? They built the set and it was far too big. And he said to the art department, like, clearly none of you have been broke and living in New York City when you were young. Like, this is not where they live. You need to resign. You need to make it like this, and that. And then when you get to Jack Slater's apartment late in the movie, whereas his daughter lives in, like, the exact kind of action movie home you'd imagine he's in like the most depressing.
Yeah, but that's funny.
Right. And McTiernan's
I love
this is the apartment you live in when you're struggling in Los Angeles versus New York. And what I wanted to underline in this moment is, like, oh, not just because he's a fictional character, right, that he's not fully fleshed out, but, like, within the reality of this movie, this guy's life is actually pretty depressing. And he was like, we could not find an apartment with a location bad enough where we literally just went to a used car lot and they built it by the side of the road.
Right, because that it's by the freeway is really funny.
Of course.
Because it's such a beautiful, it's so well done. I love that. That gag is one of my favorite gags in the movie.
Right. And then you get to this whole thing of, like, his wife, he wishes his wife called him, his ex-wife called him and nagged him.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing going on in this guy's life. And it's almost the most interesting thing in this movie is when you get to the premiere at the end and the realities are colliding and Slater's in real New York and he's pretending to be Schwarzenegger at the premiere.
He's realizing there is an Arnold Schwarzenegger
in
all this. Yes.
And he says, like, you know, I don't like you very much.
yeah.
And Schwarzenegger is played off in this movie as, like, such a careerist kind of goofball buffoon.
Right.
And Slater, as the movie develops, does start to get this sort of pathos to him and drop the mask. And McTiernan was like, my take was that at this moment you realize, oh, Slater actually is more real than Schwarzenegger is. And it's not just a commentary for me on, like, movie stars being vapid. But he's like, no, but that's the character that people know and form an emotional relationship.
That's what it is.
Right? He's like, we think we love Schwarzenegger, but we don't. We love Schwarzenegger in quotes, which Slater is.
You don't want to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger because he's like this sort of canny politician man.
Yes.
You want to meet Jack Slater. But then when Jack Slater is dying, it's like he belongs in the movie world.
Right.
Like,
we can't have him.
Put him back.
But I love that moment where, I mean, again, this is a movie that touches on things but never goes that much deeper, where Slater says to Schwarzenegger, I hate you. I hate everything about you. Like, you know, and it's like, and I was thinking about that as from an acting point of view from Schwarzenegger. I'm like, does he hate who he has become?
A little bit.
You know, and I'm like, and I love that because he isn't poking. And this is, again, goes to why, like, there's only one person I think could really make this movie and go to those places, because he plays himself as a buffoon, but yet he's not creating a fake restaurant. It's the real Planet Hollywood.
Yes.
It's the real gyms. He's like telling this guy, come to Hollywood. You can be my stunt double. Like, he is playing all the right real specifics and then says that one moment. But again, the movie isn't interested in going there. It's just like, you are the worst thing in my life. I have to pay the person at the 7-Eleven to call me at work so I can pretend to have a wife, even though that doesn't really make sense with the scene earlier, because then why would he put her on the phone? But
the more successful version of this for Arnold is Total Recall, where he is both the ordinary everyman and also this larger-than-life spy, intergalactic spy character.
And the fact that they didn't go to one joke and just say, why do you have an Austrian accent? That was the one missing joke for me.
Yeah.
No one calls out the Austrian accent. That's an easy joke.
Right. The joke I'd rather this movie make is like, you know, when I was born in California. You know, you want the joke of him self-identifying his American backstory.
Perfect.
Right.
But merchandise spotlight, and this is plot relevant, right? But we talk about this movie being at odds with itself, and what the weird, interesting core of the movie.
Ben's laughing at my reaction to you saying merchandise
Arnold
spotlight.
being at odds with
Merchandise
himself.
spotlight. When Griffin said merchandise spotlight, David crumbled. I saw David begin.
I have
to
the
crumble.
box office page open. It's just here.
I know.
Just open a couple
Look
more
at it.
tabs.
Vibrating.
By the way, I just want to say I couldn't be happier to be spending these hours with all of you.
greatest
I'm
hours of
spending
my
time
life.
with you guys. Believe me, it's actually a true delight. And
Thank you for making the tape.
please,
Thank
come
you,
on.
guys.
Thank you for making the time.
As you said, Paul, as you brought up early, right? Schwarzenegger had approval over everything in this movie down to the merchandising and was very clear that he didn't want the action figures coming with guns, which is this thing of him being like, I represent too much now.
And
I'm a hero to children.
guns are out.
Guns are out.
People don't like guns anymore.
Now, this is a point in time where, because of the effect that we've already discussed,
of Clinton.
RoboCop, Rambo, Terminator, all of those are getting toys made by major companies, sold to children, even though they're based on R-rated movies. And everyone's like, yeah, we're just kind of not really thinking about the fact that these characters have gotten watered down and abstracted into being children's characters, even though they weren't designed that way. This movie's obviously being designed that way. And yet he's like, I don't want like the toys to perpetuate violence. The video game similarly does not have guns in it. And it was not we're weary of putting violence in the game. It was a Schwarzenegger saying, I have approval. The game cannot use guns because I don't want to perpetuate it there. But then there's the part that is at odds with itself of him being like, I'm also still constantly in this competition with myself to outdo my previous movies. I'm not willing to not have the movie have guns. And not only that, the movie needs to have bigger guns than I've ever had
he's
before.
anxious once McTiernan says like, hey, this is kind of like E.T. tone.
Right.
Being like, wait, no, my fans don't like that. Like, that's not going to work for them.
And if you call a movie The Last
I'm
Action
watching this
Hero,
video game. It looks like shit.
it's supposed to be terrible. It also came out a full year after
I mean,
the
that's
movie.
how it always was.
Yeah,
right?
but with this movie
it's like
and the
cursed.
release.
Yes.
Right. But like calling this movie Last Action Hero, releasing it in the middle of the summer, Schwarzenegger's face, I think they all were just overcome with this like absolute anxiety of, if this thing doesn't have the biggest action sequences anyone's ever seen, the audiences are going to be disappointed. It doesn't matter what movie we think we're making. It doesn't matter if we think we're making a fairy tale or a fable or whatever. It needs to have insane him hanging off of a crane kind of shit. I do want to call out, this movie did produce one of the greatest action figures of all time, which I believe is called Skull Throwing Jack Slater, which is an action figure of Schwarzenegger as Hamlet that holds the skull and fires it from his arm.
That's cool. Funny. I love
that's
that.
like funny merchandise.
Look, but again, like, what does that remind you of? Tropic Thunder. Like,
Correct.
it's like, there's so many seeds of later, slightly sharper, Hollywood parodies in this film.
But almost all of them are just going comedy first and foremost.
Yes, right.
We're not trying to have it both ways.
I will also say, I've looked at the toys numerous times.
Of course.
The other thing that I really like is that Benedict has his own car, which is like
Evil Eye Roadster? Is that what it's called? Yes.
Yes. Where essentially it's like it is.
I just want to say, Griffin is looking at nothing.
I'm
and just
looking
pulled
you
out
in the eyes.
Evil Eye Roadster while he looks dead-eyed into the lens.
I'll say this. This doesn't really look like anything more than a red car, and the figure that is, it doesn't look like Charles Dance at all.
Well, I'll tell you this much: it's a car with a bad attitude, with pop-out eyeball headlamps.
It has
a big
headlamps have the eye
bad
designs,
battering ram and trip action side pipes. I don't know what that
Does he even
means.
drive a car in the film in
He
any
never
significant
drives
way?
a car in the
But this
film.
is another thing where it's like, toy lines, it's like you make a lot of the hero, you make one villain, right? Or two villains. And you make vehicles for the heroes. You don't make villains.
I'm actually going to cut this off. No. Enough.
Evil Eye Roadster speaks to the amount of confidence they have in
That's
this
enough.
movie.
That's it. Yeah, we get
It's
it. We get it.
emblematic of Hollywood excess.
We get it. They spent too much on the money. Enough. Any final thoughts on Last Action Hero? I just had a mental moment there.
Oh,
where I was
wow,
like,
that
he's
was-
getting into the minutiae of this. Like, I'm going to fire my midget cricket at him.
That was so satisfying.
Evil Eye Roadster.
Here's what I
my
will
God,
say.
that really.
Thank God for Last Action Hero. Thank God for Last Action Hero, because I think what it did was it proved that you could make these movies, and we got great ones after it. Even if you just want to say that the great ones are Galaxy Quest, Tropic Thunder,
Wreck-It Ralph.
Or maybe it also, in its mistakes, it provides the blueprint for like, hey, how do you do this better? Or how do you focus this more?
And it's an amazing time capsule.
And it is this like, God bless Schwarzenegger. I know he kind of made a lot of mistakes, like for trying something like this.
Yes.
Versus a slice alone.
And not trying it in the safe way either.
Right.
He tried a risky thing and he did it in a weird way.
I was going to say, I agree with everything everyone is saying, but I still think it is unsuccessful. You know what I mean? Like it is.
I
like
think that's
I guess
fair.
I watch it, and I think, oh, there is an incredibly executed version of this that is in here. That is what a missed opportunity. Because I want to be clear. I don't think this movie is trash or bad. I rewatched this movie 2 years ago. Like this movie is enjoyable to watch, but it's in spite of itself because
it's frustrating.
It is an unsuccessful version of what could have been a phenomenal movie, you know? And it's not just my expectation saying that, it's what everybody who worked on the movie has said.
It's true. It's not like McTiernan is like, right, like, now you all get it.
Well, then can I ask this question? What do we think about the legacy sequel that Schwarzenegger has teased, Last Action Hero 2? Could you do it?
I mean,
yes,
you could do that well. There's no way it would be good. That's my take.
I think let Edgar Wright make that movie.
Yes.
I think you could remake this and knock it out of the fucking park. I don't think you can do it as a legacy sequel.
Remake it with who?
I'll tell you who it is.
Who?
Chris Pratt. That's the application of Pratt.
I think The Rock could do it too.
I think you could do it with The Rock, absolutely. I think you could do it with all these guys, and it's a parody of The Expendables.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
My Pratt take is just that Pratt is always best when he's playing a guy who thinks he's an action star rather than an action star.
But that's what like a movie 2 is, number one. And number 2, like all these movies now just have a lot of Last Action Hero built into them already.
The other problem.
Right.
Like such as The Expendables.
Right.
Where Arnold Schwarzenegger is going like, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Do you get it? It's from the other movie that I'm not in. You know, like how
Do
many
we live in
layers
too much of a post-ironic hell
we're
to
all
make
kind of
this?
sick of the post-ironic, shit. Like, right? Isn't that what we're all complaining about?
A little bit, yeah.
The self-awareness? I don't know.
I mean, my wild swing was you do it with Tom Cruise.
I mean, if you
that is
you
more
know what,
appealing.
Paul, you're right. If you could get Cruise,
if you could pull that
it would
off.
feel so magical. It would feel so unreal.
His
Tom Cruise and P.T. Anderson. You have P.T. Anderson direct.
And it's
you're just talking
it's
about
Mission
fantasy
Impossible
films.
10. It's Mission Impossible 10, and it's a spoof.
But I think that Tom Cruise actually does provide a different kind of a thing. Because it's like, oh, I'm going to jump off this building. I'm going to do this other thing. We're going to do this. And it's like, and he's got that energy. Because it's like, I think the way to go about it is a person who, it's like a Denzel Washington, a Tom Cruise, these guys who are like, they're always Denzel on some level. If it's in a
They're
unstoppable. Yeah.
But even the Macquarie Mission Impossibles and Ghost Protocol, like, have that thing of like,
They put the vulnerability.
what a weird guy this is.
Right.
Like, he exists outside
and they put
of
self-doubt in the character. And
they also aren't, these movies aren't the monocultural, they don't have the weight that the action movies of the 80s and early 90s did. They were culture in a way that I think you're right. The only way to do it now would be to do it inside of an IP, inside of Marvel, inside of DC.
right. Like, to a certain degree, this is what Deadpool is trying to do.
Yeah,
which
you're
is
right.
like play in the most popular genre with the vibes, the budget of the most popular genre, and have your cake and eat it too. Have it work as an action movie and also be like, isn't it crass that the studio wants to put all these cameos in the movie that I'm in right now? And I don't know if you guys know this, but Deadpool knows that he's in a movie.
He doesn't.
I just want to say something quick before we go on. It's just, I love talking this long, but if we don't get to the box office game soon, I'm going to like get really
David,
pissed off.
I gotta say, you're being a little inconsiderate.
David, I know you want to keep
Jason's
talking
getting
about it, but
antsy.
can we go to the
Ben?
box office game?
Jason's getting antsy.
Well, we took a bathroom break.
True.
So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, that was like 5-10 minutes.
But I would say with ads, we're at the 3-hour mark.
So June 18th, 1993.
Jurassic Park is #1 at the box office.
I had an additional thought I wanted to contribute.
I'm sure
Okay.
you did.
Great.
David is looking at me
Thank you, Ben.
in a way that makes me feel like I should fear for my life. So, you know what? Let's play the box office game.
June 18th, 1993. Jurassic Park is the number one film at the box
in its
office.
second
Spoiler alert.
Yes.
We basically already acknowledged it.
Yeah. No.
Not only did that film open very well, $50 million, it dropped 23% for a, front-loaded blockbuster.
Yes.
That's crazy.
No, and had the thing that Sony was hoping would happen with Last Action Hero, where it played the entire summer.
Of course. Number 2 is Last Action Hero, which is opening to $15 million.
Really bad.
Which is really bad.
What was the opening weekend on Jurassic?
50.
Yeah.
50.
50.
Right. The version of that word you want to hear.
More than 3 times. I mean, the other thing I read, the moment where like Sony really kind of crumbled into panic, the following weekend, they also released Sleepless in Seattle. And Sleepless in Seattle opens to number 2, knocks Last Action Hero down, and makes more in its opening weekend.
That is correct.
And they
it
were
makes
like
17.
Right.
Yes.
And they were just like, we've just trumped ourselves with a movie that was a pretty low budget flyer.
Sleepless opened to $17 million and legged it out to 126 domestic. Last Action Hero opened to 15 and hobbled to 50 domestic.
Yeah.
It was not a successful film. It makes worldwide 137, which I guess is like above its budget.
And you have to add in like $200,000 worth of sales on the Evil Eye Roadster.
Right. The Evil Eye Roadster obviously kept Mattel afloat or whatever. But I think the studio...
And a Burger King tie-in?
The cups were amazing. I mean, David's lucky that I'm not doing the Burger King sidebar.
Look, you can do a fucking Patreon
You're not
episode.
doing an episode of Cup Watch?
Or I can just leave and you guys can talk cups for 2 hours for all I care.
I did have the cups for this.
Yeah,
and they had a film reel on it, so you would turn it.
There's magic motion.
Magic motion.
It was almost like a zoetrope effect,
Yeah,
David.
it really
It's the
was
magic
cool.
of cinema.
The opening weekend on Terminator 2.
Wait, I'm sorry. You walked
It's
out of
twice
the
as
movie and bought the cups.
Yeah, you walked out of the movie, but you were
I
like,
bought the cup before the movie.
Wow. Okay,
well,
okay.
that's how they
Oh,
get
wow.
you, of course.
Oh, what a heartbreak.
And I had the cat one.
And it would taunt you. But
Whiskers.
I think the studio took like a $25 million write down on this film. It was not successful.
No.
Number 3 at the box office, Griffin, is an action film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger's greatest rival that I think is very well liked to this day.
Cliffhanger?
It's Cliffhanger.
Okay.
Which is kind of the last successful Stallone movie in a way, right? Like that's kind of the tail end of him too.
Yeah.
I guess Demolition Man is after this.
Where does that end up?
84.
That must have really hurt Arnold.
Wow.
Especially because like I like Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's stupid.
It's just another
right.
Stallone movie versus Schwarzenegger being like, I'm going to make my biggest film ever.
Right. And Cliffhanger's just like, I climbed the cliff. I have muscles.
Right.
And also, Schwarzenegger's like, oh, I'm going to do like a meta movie. I'm going to do a movie that comments on things that's like after, that's seeking to go past these kind of movies that Sly's like, no, I'm still making the movie.
Stallone's like, just give me an occupation and I'll come up with a funny character name.
Well, or it's just like, what if I was on a cliff? And it's like, wow, that's pretty dangerous. It's like, or it sounds like our movie is in production. Number 4 at the box office, Griffin. This is a more interesting one.
Okay.
This is a film that opened on a few screens last week, has expanded to only 420.
Wow.
And is entering the top 5.
Wow.
So it's got a crazy per screen average.
Yeah.
It is a biopic. So it's sort of interesting. It's an Oscar player in a way.
Oscar player.
But it's in the summer.
In June.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good movie. But it's best known for its performances.
It's not Malcolm X.
No.
But am I thinking along the right lines?
It's
not Chaplin, is it?
No, it's not about it is about entertainment, I guess.
It's about
An entertainer.
It's about entertainer.
A famous entertainer, but it's a tragic and dark film as well.
It's not What's Love Got to Do with It?
It is What's Love Got to Do with It. It's Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne and What's Love Got to Do with It.
It's an interesting release strategy for that movie.
But I think it sort of succeeded.
It clearly did.
I haven't seen that movie in years.
Yeah, good movie.
Do you guys care about What's Love Got to Do with It?
I mean, I saw it when it came out, but I've not seen it since.
It's really an Angela Bassett like tour de force.
Yeah.
But Larry Fishburne's incredible in it.
Yeah.
Number 5. Now, this is a little more of a time capsule movie, I would say. This one hasn't endured.
That's also, they got Tina Turner's final on-screen appearance in Last Action Hero, and the movie about Tina Turner's kind of
It's true.
collecting more heat. What does that movie end up at domestically?
61, I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
Everything's outgrossing Last Action Hero.
So the final film, it's a comedy. It's a mismatched comedy. One of these people and one of these people, they don't belong together.
Shouldn't be in the same movie.
Starring a very famous comedian.
They're mismatched. It's not Bird on a Wire.
No.
Is it the man with two brains?
It's not that.
It's not a Lily Tomlin.
Not.
And it's not a Bette Midler.
It's
It's
not
not a
Lily.
Lily.
And does it
None of these
star the Weasel?
Is the Weasel.
Who is the Weasel?
Wait, who is the Weasel?
Pauly Shore.
What's going on?
Ben, put another
What?
20 minutes on
Is
the
it?
clock.
Are they wheezing the juice at all in it?
What's going on?
Pauly Shore.
Oh, no, it's not a Pauly Shore. No. Jesus Christ almighty.
Son-in-law was a
I
big
need
hit.
to leave.
Son-in-law was a big hit.
It was a big hit. I'm gonna Google son-in-law right now. Find out how much that money made.
Did it outgross Last Action Hero?
This film.
Okay, famous comedian. She's the more famous person?
Yeah, but he's pretty famous too. But he's a better known
Son-in-law
as a
made
TV star.
37 million.
Well,
Wow.
this film made 44, so son-in-law
pretty
ate its
close.
dust.
Okay, he's a TV actor.
They're well known for dating, I think, either before or after this. So they had a relationship sparked by this movie, I believe.
Oh, I know it is. I got it. I know. And
What
a
is it?
controversy. A controversy at the Friars Club.
There was a controversy at the Fires Club
Oh.
around this couple.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And the couple is...
Ted Danson, Whoopi Goldberg,
Made in
Movie.
America?
Made in America.
The film is made
Will
in
Smith.
America. Richard Benjamin's
Will Smith.
Made in America. Young Will Smith.
I think that's
true.
his first film role ever.
Nia Long is in
Yeah.
there as well. What is that actually about? I actually have not seen Made in America.
He's a-
Literally all I know is that he has a cowboy hat on the poster
Yes.
and she's like, that's crazy.
He owns like a used car dealership, and Whoopi Goldberg is Will Smith's mother.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's a sperm donor movie.
Oh,
Right.
he turns out to have, like, he's
Yes,
like, I want to meet my dad.
Oh.
Yes.
And it's like, this guy, he has a cowboy hat. What
Yes.
kind of fucking topsy-turvy world are we living in?
This guy was Made in America.
Have not seen. Have any of you seen Made in America?
No.
Okay.
I think I did at the time
Yeah.
because I saw everything,
okay.
but I don't have any recollection.
Some of the other films in the top 10, you've got Larry Cohen's Guilty as Sin with
Mhm.
Rebecca De Mornay.
Ooh.
Definite, and
Ooh,
Don
I didn't see
Johnson.
that.
That must have been a really chill shoot. Those three.
That sounds like an erotic thriller.
Yes, a crappy 90s erotic thriller. Maybe it's great. Like 4 people are going to tweet at me now or blue sky me or whatever
It's
it is
actually
people
the
do
best
to me.
movie.
Actually, a really underrated. David was
But
wrong.
hold on,
Very
look,
underrated.
I like 90s erotic thrillers, but it is funny now how everyone's like, I mean, like, these are good. And I'm like, wait a second, they can't all be
hold on.
good. Like,
Well, but that's correct me if I'm wrong. That's pretty much what you guys are saying about Last Action
Kind of.
Hero.
it's pretty good. It's a pretty good movie. I had a good time watching it. Number 7 is Dave, a charmer.
A fucking masterpiece.
Love it.
Number 8 is a new film that I've never heard about. Once Upon a Forest. What the hell is that?
No.
It's an animated film.
Oh.
It's
don't know.
a Hanna-Barbera animated
Yes. No, that
film.
movie's a disaster.
Oh, wow.
It
Yeah.
doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Looks like is it a rip of Fern Gully?
Yeah.
He looks kind of like, fantasy, like Last Unicorn-y, maybe.
Let's also call out that Schwarzenegger has a cameo in Dave
He does.
as himself,
Yes.
doing his sort of like fitness spokesperson.
Yeah, joking
Leader
about
of
his
America
political
thing.
aspirations.
Yeah.
Right. Number 9 is
I don't remember Dave at
Dave
all.
rules.
Dave
Dave
is the
rocks.
best.
Jason, you'd probably have a good time talking. And Jason, you should watch it and then text Griff and I, and we can talk about his penis.
Thank
which
you.
is
We have
You got
an ongoing
You got
argument about his
there's
penis.
a
in
big scene
Dave.
in the film revolving around his
Right,
penis.
right. I know. I think I've heard you guys.
But you
talk
need to
about
see
it
the
before,
film.
but-
That's so
Rewatch
good.
the film and then
Yes.
tell us where you land.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not even sure we're divided on it. We just both are like, where is the truth?
We like asking the question. We're just
Right.
asking questions.
Right, because isn't it basically his wife sees him in the shower, and if it was the same guy, mustn't he have
She has a
different dick?
reaction that is hard to, like, the
It's hard
movie
to
is
read.
making ambiguous.
That's to say she's seeing a different
Right.
dick, and that is confusing.
Well, did you hear about that? Like, I guess last night they announced that Barry Keoghan is going to be in the new Dave. And
I'm
they're
hearing
doing a
this.
lot more, and they're really going to make that
They're
kind
from
of.
Saltburn.
that one's going to be shot from the bottom down, right? That one is not going to do the,
They really they felt like that was the kind of the crux of it. So that movie's going to be a lot more dick specific.
right. Right. Number 9 at the box office is a great film, Menace to Society, which is sort of like a surprise hit.
And then remember, obviously. Menace to Society, don't drink your juice in South Central while you're getting your boys in the hood.
Don't be a menace. Don't be a menace to society.
A movie we covered on Patreon.
We sure did. Number 10. I don't know this movie. Life with Mikey, starring Michael J. Fox.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's an agent for child stars. Is that right?
It's kind of like what if Michael J. Fox had flamed out and become an agent for child stars, like post Family Ties or whatever.
Yes.
Right.
Who's the agent that would have fucked up Michael J. Fox's life? Right. The movie. It's kind of it's sort of Jerry Maguire with child stars, right? Like he sort of learns how to be a better person.
He's against them, and then he learns to be like, I got to support them, and I love them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
David, you seem thrilled.
I'm looking at the poster and I'm just sort of like, who's this for?
I've only recently been watching The Good Wife, and have watched so much of it, and have been absolutely delighted how much Michael J. Fox is in the show over the years
The Good Wife.
As a recurring antagonist,
as a recurring antagonist who uses his Parkinson's disease as a weapon in court.
It's so good. He's so electric to watch.
It is.
By the way, Life with Mikey, solid cast. I mean, it really is. You've already talked about Christine Baranski, Victor Garber,
Nathan Lane.
Krumholtz, Nathan Lane. Solid.
I just want to call out, Ben is currently sitting at his desk.
I think Ben is maybe rolling an arsenic cigarette for himself.
I was going to say, it looks like he's doing origami, something I didn't know.
He's gotten several phone calls from people, I assume, wondering where the hell he is.
Are you okay?
The police being missing persons report style,
I didn't foresee Ben being just as anxious to leave as David. David is running his hands through his hair.
Oh, Ben and I are pretty simpatico, I would say, right?
It depends.
Okay, so then, Ben, I won't ask what's going on with your earring or what's going on with your fashion line, because I don't want to make this last longer.
I do think we're wrapping up, but I do think if Ben wants to talk about his earring, or have you already talked about it?
It's a slightly touchy subject, but I do think Jason deserves an answer.
Yes.
Wait, did you talk about this on the mailbag episode?
I talked about it somewhere.
But, just so we can have...
behind the paywall.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think when I was there last for the James Bond movie, it had just
freshly
happened.
pierced.
Right.
Yes. At 38 years old, I decided now is the time.
Bad Boy 2.0.
So it's probably been, I don't know, when was that? It was
6 months?
6 months, 7 months ago.
Yeah.
5 months, yeah.
Normally it should heal in, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks. People have been getting their ears piercing their body for thousands and thousands of years. How could it be that one man could somehow not successfully do it? And
pierce one ear with one hole, yes.
Proven it possible.
Yeah.
Somehow my ear is not healed. It hurts
it's
quite
infected.
often. It's been infected on and off. I don't know what to do.
Boy.
Then, of course, I got so many different contradictory sort of things from people who listen to our mailback episode of what I should do. So I'm at a loss. But right now, currently, my ear itches so much.
He can't take out the starter stud. The whole goal was to be able to experiment with different earrings, and he's still stuck with the one they give you just to.
I think you got to walk away.
Open.
What if you double down, lose the ear, replace it with a cyber ear or something?
Cyber ear.
Just saying.
Interesting. The goal was to get a Michael Jordan sized hoop,
right? Because you're a lot like Michael Jordan.
Right.
Yeah. Right. In every other way, you're just like MJ.
I always refer to you as the Michael Jordan of being Ben.
My wife just texted me to relax. I think she can tell that I'm I'm coming home soon. I promise.
She's like, just enjoy the show.
Just enjoy the show.
And to answer your question, as far as the fashion, I did do a fashion show over the summer at the Bell House.
Really?
Success.
Yeah.
I have a new collection. It's on congratulations.com.
Yep.
So that's YOU.
Yeah.
I'm going to go peruse it after this. I'd love to be dressed by you.
Wow. That's a huge honor. If anything, if I may, I'd love to send you both some free swag.
Hey, always.
Done.
Perfect.
Also, Ben,
Done.
have you thought about doing a line of congratulations, white button downs and black slacks?
But they're blue. They're just jeans. If you're specifically speaking to my uniform, it's jeans.
Okay.
So but I will wear jeans that have been buried.
Oh wow.
Good.
Okay.
Smart.
All right. This is great. This is huge.
We can keep going, David. I know you're like just miserable.
Well, now I'm getting panicked because I am really behind in my book.
Okay, yeah, Paul is starting to. This is the thing. We.
I wasn't. Now I'm like, I am
taken so much.
I've
These
been
are
here for a while now.
famous people.
They were the ones who got
I know. They're crazy.
this morning.
Yes, Paul said
literally the one thing I should not be doing right now is a 4-hour podcast. Like comically, so this is the first time my children have been out of the house. My wife was away all weekend.
I'm actually starting to feel really bad. Okay, all right, we're gonna wrap this up.
I'm happily here. But when you got that text, I was like,
Paul, you're the friendliest man in show business. You're a great sport, but you got a deadline to
We're
hit.
gonna end this episode.
Very harsh.
I just want it known.
Jason, you're also the friendliest
Jason
man in
this
show
morning
business.
texted, "I'm halfway in and can't wait to chat. I blocked out 9 hours." And Paul responded, "I told your assistant's name, whatever you allotted, double it."
I do. Because I go.
I did notice. I do love, because we're approaching it. I noticed that my assistant put it in my calendar from 11 to 3.
So our reputation is
What was the longest episode that we did?
I think used cars was like closer to 3.5. I don't remember.
Right.
But I think Alex's still longer now.
I think there's a longer episode now, and this is
I think one of the ARP.
Maybe Fight Club was now the longest.
Finally beat it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, guys, thank you very much for making the time to do the show.
What an absolute delight. Thank you
It's
both
so
for
lovely to
having
have
us.
you guys on the show.
Is there anything you guys want to plug? Paul, when does the book come out?
Well, you can pre-order my book right now. It's called Joyful Recollections of Trauma. If you just type in Paul Scheer book, wherever you get your books, audiobooks or ebooks, you can get it. And if you do pre-order it, I will say I am kind of creating the DVD extras of book sales, just because I know it's a lot to ask of anyone to buy things. And so I'm trying to make it worth your while. I have some cool stuff lined up.
Sure.
We'll have a link in the episode description.
We shall.
Yep.
Yeah. When do we think this will be coming out?
We know when it's coming out.
Dead to rights. Much like Last Action Hero, we have a release date that we refuse to move off of.
Despite, so this is coming out in March 24th. So we are recording Wayne event. So imagine your book will be out by then, Paul,
Okay.
right?
No, my book is not coming out until May.
Oh, incredible.
Beautiful.
A big summer blockbuster release.
But the idea is, according to everybody, I'm learning so much in the publishing world that I have to make all the most important thing is the pre-sales.
Yeah.
So that's it. So don't wait. That's what I have to make sure I always am telling people. Don't wait.
It's what makes the difference is pre-sale. So everyone pre-order Paul's book.
If you are hearing this and you live in David's old stomping grounds, the UK, we will be coming with our podcast, How Did This Get Made, to London, to Dublin,
Yes.
to Belfast,
Glasgow.
to Glasgow. We're going to be going all through Scotland, Ireland, and mostly just London for How Did This Get Made shows. So if you want to come and see us, go to the website,
hdtgm.com.
So check that out. And then, that's it, right?
Yeah. How did this get made?
Love it.
How did this get made? And of course, you know what I'll shout out? One of my favorite podcasts. I'll shout out two things that are related to this movie. One of which is the book Last Action Hero,
love it.
which is a fantastic book that is about all of the movies and stars of this era of action movies. Your Seagals, your Slys, your Schwarzeneggers, your Chuck Norrises, everybody gets a chapter or more. And then I'll also shout out the Action Boys podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts, has a fantastic episode about this movie, as well as all the other movies that we've talked about beforehand. It is John Gabris, who's a past, I'm assuming, and future guest of this show.
He just did Predator.
Oh, perfect. It's Gabris, it's Ben Rogers, and it's Ryan Stanger. It's a Patreon podcast called Action Boys with a Z.
Become a janitor.
It
if
is
you aren't one already.
fantastic. Yes, become a janitor, become a Shadow Wolf, zombie squad right here. Let's do it.
And if I'll shout out one more thing. If you want to read the novelization of The Last Action Hero, you can do that. It's available at Walmart. It's pre-owned. It's only about $5, and you can kind of get some more of the fun details of a novelization of a movie about a movie. And I think all the subtleties are really going to play in that.
I got something to plug. Mattel made a toy called Benedict's Evil Eye Roadster. It's currently available on eBay. Can be found intact, mint package, complete with instructions, readily for under 20.
Fucking long too.
What, Kevin? He hates talking.
Can I thank whoever the blankie is who sent in the copies of Roger and Val, a show that I asked for access to when I was last on Blank
on
Check.
Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yes, when I did Tomorrow Never Dies, and one of your fans ripped and sent the whole series, which has been phenomenal. So thank you to that blankie.
And who says all of our fans are terrible?
I'm currently looking for the Judy Sill documentary. If someone has access to the Judy Sill documentary,
I like you using.
I like using this as a crowdsourcing.
As like Pirate Bay.
Yes. I'm not on social media, so I can't ask people to do things. So I can just come on podcasts and say, I would like someone to send me the Judy Sill documentary.
Good.
And there is another show that I'm trying to think of. Posh Nosh. Could somebody find Rip and send me Posh Nosh, which is the Richard E. Grant starring British fake cooking show that feels like a Barefoot Contessa, but is very funny.
Incredible.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you for being here. David, how are you feeling?
I'm fine. I'm sorry. I really hate that I am the stick in the mud sometimes. You know, I do. I don't.
We would have it no other way.
Want to be. But I know I play into the. You know, it's all part of the fun, right?
This feels like a moment of real emotional catharsis.
Of something the movie could never face.
Yeah.
It's been. I moved 1 month ago, the 15th of
You're
December.
looking at the calender.
It's the 15th of January today.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Happy 1 month in new home.
But like, it's just this. It's been a long month. It's been a long month.
Yeah.
So
you want to talk about it?
This is as good a form as any. If Ben, you want to add another tape to the reel to reel.
The fact that we all got COVID and like our COVID
spool it up.
Our COVID cases were very mild. Like it was fine, but it was like to tack on an extra week of like you're just in the house and you can't really do anything.
No, that's rough.
No, that's bad.
Was after the move and the holidays was, you know, it was, and then I started reading The Shining. Like I was like,
insane decision.
What's the next book in my Kindle? I'll read this. And it was The Shining. And I was like, yeah, sure. Let me read The Shining. And then I was just like, what am I doing? I can't leave the house.
You just moved with your wife and small child into a new home, got sick, were stuck indoors and started reading The Shining.
If I'm your wife and I see that you're reading The Shining after all of this, I am terrified.
Yeah, I'd shine your ass out of self-defense.
Luckily, we don't have any roque mallets. You know, the book is
roque mallets. Yes.
And yeah, Friday we have to do Die Hard, and it's gonna take.
It's gonna be a great episode. And
I think it is
the Die Hard guest.
I'm really excited.
Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith.
Oh, that's what you said.
I mean, unless that falls through, in which case this is all getting cut. Ben, let's go. Let's be done. Right?
Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Ben, David, Jason, and Paul, for the generosity of your time.
Very, very much so.
And thank you to our listeners for the same. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty, executive producing the show. Adrian McKeon, our production coordinator. Alex Barron, our editor. JJ Birch for our research. Lane Montgomery, the Great American Novel, for our theme song. Joe Bow and Pat Rounds for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features, where we're doing the Terminator commentaries, and we're doing the full episode on Sin Eater, The Crimes of Anthony Pellicano. So that's both sides, context on McTiernan and Schwarzenegger, if you enjoyed us gabbing about those two subjects today. Tune next week for Die Hard with a Vengeance.
That's right. Haven't done that one yet.
Haven't done that one yet.
Oh, you know, by the way, we just did Terminator 2 on Unspooled.
I saw that.
Yes, you guys just did that.
Yeah.
That's
but you guys have also done it too, so I don't want to.
This was our second Terminator 2 episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a rare double dip for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yes. Die Hard with a Vengeance. Right.
Yeah.
We haven't done
And we followed that up by doing Wayne's World. And here's the interesting thing. In the last 3 movies I've seen, Robert Patrick has portrayed the T-1000.
You've seen the complete T-1000 trilogy.
You did all 3.
Except for the ride, the Universal Studios.
We did that.
Did that on
I know that, yes.
Have you been watching this season of Reacher?
No. I've heard it's not as good.
Robert it's great.
Patrick's reaching now?
He's in it. He's in it as the villain, and he has a Sarah Connor joke.
Oh,
I love it.
I gotta watch Reacher.
We gotta reach.
Should I watch season 1, Jason? Should I just dive in with season 2, or should I watch season 1?
You can. Oh, you can watch season 2 because they're complete.
They're
Much like
standalone.
Slow Horses, they are completely contained storylines. And
watch Slow Horses. That's
Season
what I
1.
really wanna watch,
Slow Horses. Don't watch Reacher yet. Watch Slow Horses.
Okay, all right. When I finish For All Mankind, I'll do Slow Horses, and then I'll do.
Stop watching For All Mankind and do Slow Horses.
Absolutely not.
But
I gotta finish For All Mankind.
but it's great, and Reacher's a blast. Anyway,
the For All Mankind episode I just watched ended with Eddie Gathegi saying, "Do you want to steal an asteroid with me?" And then it cut to credits with X gonna give it to you playing over. It's that movie. That show's the best.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah.
To a quote unquote 70-year-old Joel Kinnaman in like the most hilarious old man makeup
We're all
of all
trying
time.
to end the episode, and you're getting into what TV shows you're watching. I was ending the show.
David, it seems like you want to hang out.
David, I need to get out of here.
Okay, let's
I
go.
have places to be.
Yeah, your toilet.
Yeah, I do. I got a full night ahead of me. That's all I
David-
can tell you.
David, have you watched The Gold?
Which one?
The Gold.
No.
Oh, get involved with The Gold.
Okay.
It's about a 1980s British gold heist.
Yep. The Brinksman robbery.
Yes, and it's fantastic. Jack Loudon, Hugh Bonneville. It's great. Great cast, great show.
It sounds pretty good. I gotta be honest with you. All right, I'll check this out. Goodbye.
That's not how the show
Goodbye.
ends.
I know. I'm saying goodbye.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's supposed to be smell you later, fart heads.
No, that's Patreon.
Yes.
That's Patreon. Here's how we end this.
For you, it's Patreon. I'm saying it here.
Okay. And as always, smell you later, fart heads.
Gentlemen, so much fun.
Thank you guys so much.
Just a delight.
David just put the headphones back.
Well, I realized I
on.
wouldn't be able to hear you guys. Usually I take the headphones off, but right.
Holy shit.
Great stuff.
What a
so
delight.
good. I think everyone will be so happy. I should hope.
don't. If
They
they
fucking
don't.
better be.
If they, this is how we end every episode. Now we go. They better like that.
Honest to God, who cares what they think? I had a blast. I did this for me. Oh, I'm actually, but you know what I didn't ask is I'm just recording in QuickTime. Is that okay for you, Ben, or would you prefer something else?
No, that's totally fine.
Okay.
And I'm recording in GarageBand.
Wow. I'm going to actually have to ask you to use something else, Paul. Just joking. Okay. That's great, too.
Oh, great. All right, I was going to pull out Audacity, whatever you need.
No.
Did we get that on mic, Ben? Because that was so funny, that trick.
We got to record all these bits.
Griffin, we got it.
Thank fucking God. That's Patreon content.
I bet all this better be in the app.
You know what? Yeah. We'll make sure to put it like we'll have like a
over
long
the theme song
pause.
at the end.
Yeah,
like
maybe
3 minutes of silence.
30 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
An hour of silence.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd love. You know what podcasts don't do enough? The hidden track.
The hidden track.
The truly hidden track.
Like do the full outro, play the song, and then at the end, after like a minute of silence, just dump all of this.
And endless nameless.
That would be my favorite
By the way,
thing.
I believe that we tried that maybe on How to Disc It Made, but what we don't realize is once people start to hear that you're even going towards an end, they're like,
they just delete. I do that. Yeah, I do that. I will admit, when people ramp in podcasts into the like, okay, so I'm just like, great, they're done. Delete. Like, I'm done.
Same.
Yep. And then also people will have those apps that are like remove silence.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's true. Like, yes.
Mine people would, what am I talking in our Reddit about? All the time be like, the commentary doesn't sync up at all. This is fucked up, and then they'd be like, oh, my app was removing silence.
Yeah,
so it like sped up the episode.
Insane.
All right.
Okay.
Well, it's their own fault because they're going to miss out on this great part.
Yeah,
of the episode.
A hidden track that happens after 20 minutes of silence at the end of the episode.
I love that. And smart people will notice, wait, there's 20 minutes still left in this file?
That's how I felt at the end of Air. I was like, they got it. They bagged them. Why is there 15 more minutes of this movie? And then I realized it was just for like where every character went for about 10 minutes.
Okay, get ready for my world famous, perfectly honed Arnold Schwarzenegger impression.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, ready? This has been a good series for me to continue to step in it. I'm getting into it. This is my.
This is your warm up. This is your way.
I like the warm up.
How are you bad at this?
Put this all better be in, Ben, or I'm suing.
Okay, this could go in. For
ready?
Sure.